Alright, hitting that live button. Alright, says we are live, so I'm going to assume that we are actually live. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart. Yes, I am a little sick. Brandon is here as well. His last video from like a couple years ago is linked in the description below. And today we're going to be talking about Nintendo as we usually do. At this point, the regular schedule is Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern-ish. Sometimes I have to delay just a little bit because of work and recovery. I mean, honestly, I got out of work actually early today, but I was just outside of the country, and I slept like 4 hours a day for the last like 4.5 days or so, so I was pretty tired, so I needed a nap right after work. So I pushed things up slightly. I do have a cat now. She may come out at some point. Maybe. She's there, but you know, she's just eating. So
she's around. Yeah,
she's not hiding. She's just down there. She doesn't know that there's stuff going on over here yet. So, but yes, the plan for this evening is to talk about Splatoon 3 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Last week, we got 2 new trailers for both of these games respectively. For Xenoblade Chronicles 3, we even got a few extra little gameplay bits as well that showed us more of a glimpse of the combat system and perhaps gives us hints for other things on top of that. But the big news is that we got a release date for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and we got a release date for Splatoon 3 within the same week. It wasn't really expected that we get both news for both in the same week, but that is what happened. And yeah, we got news for both games. They're both coming relatively soon. They have not been delayed to next year. They're both coming out relatively on time. So we're focusing on both these games for tonight's show. Now, before we jump into things, I kind of want to just, check in with the chat here. Let people sort of roll in. And also say hello to Brandon. How's your week been, buddy?
I've been good. I was feeling kind of sick today. I got up. I was trying to eat. It's not happening. My body was like, food is a bad idea. It's like one of those things. Like I'm trying to take. I'm taking one bite. And I'm like, oh, don't throw up. Okay, but I know I need food. So I'm like, okay, just gotta wait, calm my body down, try to eat more food. So like, I slept a lot today because I wasn't feeling good, but I'm feeling fine now. So ready to be on the cast.
Awesome. So I don't know if Ruby will want to come up. Hey Ruby, you want to come up to me, please? You should reveal the world how amazing you are. This is Ruby.
Oh, look at her, adorable.
This is the camera. Look at the camera. She's just like, why are you holding me? What did I do? You didn't do anything. Oh, I'm sorry. She's still really tiny. Okay.
Yeah, she's pretty small.
Relax. I'm putting you down. I know. You don't want to be on you're not ready to be the co-host yet. You don't know how to talk. She's just chilling. But, that's her. She'll probably want to, at some point. We're going to be out here for a couple hours. Or an hour and a half, at least. So you'll see her again at some point, right? Maybe more people will be around to see her. But on that note, guys, like the podcast, share it out. I'm sure people will be rolling in soon. But let's check in with the chat, like I said here. Brian Eck, hello. Always look forward to Monday night's podcast. We're listening while playing Golden Sun for the first time. Playing it for the first time, awesome. I am personally hoping there is some sort of like remaster or just even a port of these games to Switch at some point or another.
That'd be nice.
I mean, there's like, I think the last one came out on 3DS, if I'm not mistaken. It was like 2011, 2012, I want to say. I could be slightly off there. But anyway, regardless, I just kind of hope eventually we do see Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games, so we can at least get one of them on the Switch at some point in that way. That would be nice to see.
I haven't played any of them, so I would like to have the opportunity on the Switch.
Yeah, it would be great. DE Fox, hello there. How are you doing? TC, hello. Thank you. Yeah, I was like, you know what? I should wear a shirt I haven't worn before. So I'm wearing a shirt I haven't worn before. Having Hope 5, hello. Happy Monday. Yeah, I showed off my kitty. She's just playing down there for a little bit. She's a baby. So I'll let her do her thing. Joycey J, hello. Joining the awesome videos. I've been here waiting for this moment. Here is this moment. This is this moment. Divine Zenith, thank you. I'm glad you think she's cute. TC, I'm finally getting the hang of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I'm captured by the story and find myself losing track of time playing. I'm pumped to get through it. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Awesome. I'm so happy for you that you're playing through these games now. It's quite an experience. Absolutely. I think you're going to, I mean, if you're already getting the hang of it now, I think you're just going to kind of love the experience. It's just awesome. I would say that when I need to sort of describe what Xenoblade is, I mean, it's an RPG. And if you are a fan of anime, you're definitely going to be really into the Xenoblade Chronicles stories, like, absolutely. If you're not a fan of anime, you might be thrown off, especially by Xenoblade Chronicles 2, because it's very anime-centric, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And it's one of the reasons I love it, because I actually love anime, right? I'm a pretty typical dork, but not everyone is, so sometimes it throws people off a little bit. But, you know, going beyond that, it's basically these giant worlds that you can explore, roam around. It's like a sci-fi fantasy world. And the combat system's different by game, including even like the Future Connected and Torn of the Golden Country. Although they're all sort of similar in the sense that you can move around sort of like dynamically to some extent. It's not turn-based per se. And you can kind of pick your arts in real time, but there is still like an auto attack option, and there's multiple party members fighting at once. And that's kind of like the base sort of structure for each kind of game. But they're very deep and complex. There's a number of things you can do that link into each other, and they can lead to sort of crazy, awesome chain attacks and specials and things of that nature. So it's a very pretty much every single one is a very satisfying system in its own right. But they make sure to make them all feel a little different. To the point where there's a decent learning curve each game. Sometimes that is sort of a detriment to the games because it takes more time to learn those systems, especially in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, right? Mostly 2, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good gist of the Xenoblade series. An awesome RPG that has a slightly different system compared to other games, that has giant, open, awesome worlds to explore with pretty good stories, especially if you're into anime-like stories.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say the first one is definitely less tropey, as far as like the anime tropes and stuff. It's a lot easier to get into. You're less of a weeb, I guess.
Yeah.
It also has a much simpler combat system, so it kind of eases you into that whole thing. Whereas if you go like straight for 2, it's a lot more complicated, and they don't explain it very well.
After having played 2 and then going back to play 1, especially with the definitive version, I did kind of feel that difference in complexity.
I kind of felt it was too slow.
1?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I feel like 1's a lot of just waiting for your arts to
It's a little easier to master, to your point. Like with 2, there's just so much going on that you can do that, like... Yeah, that one's a lot harder to master. Engaged. Yeah, for sure.
2, you're constantly thinking strategy at all times, and 1, a lot of it's just kind of like setting up a much more simple strategy and kind of just waiting for your arts to recharge in different things and hoping your teammates do something you want them to do.
Yeah, I did the typical with Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I would do it was just kind of like the known strongest combo, which was a combination of, man, I'm forgetting their names, Shulk, Rhine, and Dunban. And I would just
good combo.
I would be able to do crazy chain attacks that would just have obscene amounts of damage, and sometimes the enemies would be a much higher level than me, but as long as they got the combo going, if we could get into that chain attack, we could still kill those enemies before they could kill us. It was kind of like we were like a glass cannon sort of party. Yeah. But that cannon is really strong once it gets going. If it doesn't get going though, then you're kind of done.
Yeah, you don't have much healing in that party.
Yeah. So checking the chat here, Jean-Carl added me, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in July. This is way sooner than I expected. Yeah, that's insane.
2 days for my birthday.
2 days from your birthday. That's really good timing. Really good timing. We're going to be jumping into that because that is like the big sort of talking point here, the release date for both games and how they may be related. We'll be getting into that. TC, the combat style threw me off at first, but I approached it to actually understand it, and it wasn't bad at all. Coming from Kingdom Hearts 3, where my fingers go berserk, I actually like the auto attack. Like, and you know, it's actually a really interesting point you bring up, that the auto attack is actually in a way a perk. some people don't like the fact there's an auto attack because it kind of takes away from maybe it feeling like a real-time combat system. But there's a number of things that are already happening in real time. You can't do attacks in real time. Those are your arts, right? You press that art and it unleashes the art in real time. It's not like, you know, you're just click. It's not like Pokemon where it's turn-based. You click it and wait, and it activates. You click the art and it activates. But there's a cooldown for each of these arts, right? The auto attack is an automatic attack, but you can move around your character, and depending on the positioning of your character, that auto attack may be more effective or not. So there is still a lot you can do within it. And to the point of TC here, the auto attack, because it's an automatic attack, it lets you focus on other crazy things like the arts and how they combine to each other, and then you can auto cancel, and then you build up a synergy gauge with your teammates, and they have specials, and you can launch different commands for your party, and then that builds up to a chain attack or a crazy special, and then there's orbs flying around, and that leads to an even crazier full burst attack. Like, there's a mounting level of systems in place for the Xenoblade games in general. I'm sort of generalizing here. And so having the auto attack, I agree. It's kind of needed.
Say,
they have to change things dramatically for it to not be auto attack.
Yeah, I would say the combat system, if like an easy way to describe it, if you are familiar, the MMO might be like it's kind of like an MMO combat system, but much deeper and more interesting. But it's kind of like that same, like you have like a row of arts and their spells or whatever it is called in that particular game, and you can set them off. But there's a lot of other systems and supporting systems that take it way further than your typical like MMO battle system. Yeah. But in the basis, they're fairly similar. Yeah,
for sure. The core system is similar. Like you see that arts wheel at the bottom, that's Xenoblade. But moving on to the chat here, let's see. You just started having Hope 5 just started Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and you're loving it more than 1. Interesting. It's interesting because 1 is definitely, when you hear the conversations online, I think just listening to the conversations and not looking at the numbers, you would think, okay, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is something that's more liked by people. Now, the obvious advantage Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has over 1 is that it's a newer game that came out on the Nintendo Switch originally, right, as opposed to Xenoblade Chronicles 1 came out back on the Wii way back when, right? So there can be recency bias.
They had to really fight to get it on the system, and there were stock issues and stuff.
It was a whole movement, but the movement was also a bit of a vocal minority as well, right? I mean, it still sold over 1 million copies or something on Wii, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. Actually, you know what? Let's fact check that.
I think it did hit 1 million.
Let's fact check that. Yeah, you're probably right. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 sales on Nintendo Wii.
I'm not even sure if Xenoblade X hit 1 million or not.
Oh man, what? All right, so according to VG charts, which again take it with a grain of salt, but it's probably a fairly close approximation. Overall, worldwide, the sales history of Xenoblade Chronicles on the Nintendo Wii specifically is at 0.92 million. So if you round up, maybe
close.
It's close to 1 million, but not quite. And back then, 1 million was considered to be pretty good. Heck, there were games that sold 500,000, and people were like, okay, that's fairly successful, right? So not every game back then needed to sell over 1 million. So it was still pretty successful, you know, but not a 1 million seller. But still, it did pretty good. And then Xenoblade Chronicles X, I'm actually now curious about that one. Like, this is the Wii U sold 13-something million, while the Wii sold 101.
Yeah. I thought it was around like 750K.
That's a good.
But I forget.
Which, if you look at ratios, you might be like, hey, that's pretty good. Okay, a quick Google search says, as of December 2015, Xenoblade Chronicles X sold roughly 377,000 units between Japan, France, and the United States.
Oh.
Xenoblade Chronicles 2 sold 1.42 million copies as of June 2018. That's an old number. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is like at 2.5 million right now. Interesting. So that's as of 2015. Xenoblade Chronicles X sales were not good.
Didn't that game come out in 2015?
Yeah. So that's.
That's not.
I'm looking
up
at
to date.
I don't know. I mean, according to this article, VG charts placed at 442,000, and that was back at December 2015, which is a higher number. But again, it's a bit of an approximation.
It's gonna be higher than that because it would have sold throughout 2016 as well.
Part of the issue is that Nintendo doesn't like advertise the sales for every game forever. Yeah. So it's hard to say for sure. Maybe someone in the chat has seen an article on how much it has sold lifetime Xenoblade Chronicles X. But I think the clear indication here is that it never even hit the million mark. No. I hope I'm wrong.
I didn't think it had.
But yeah, it didn't get the success it deserved.
750,000.
Granted, Wii U sold about 13.5 million. Wii sold 101 million. But I always talk about how the Nintendo Wii, while it did sell over 100 million consoles, the majority of the people who had that system were not hardcore gamers. Like, I mean, look at the Wii versus Nintendo Switch. They're both, at this point, around the same amount of sales lifetime. I think Switch at this point has passed it, but they're close. They're both about a little over 100 million. And comparable gains for their respective times, there's a dramatic difference in sales numbers here. Twilight Princess sold like 7 million or something on Wii. In contrast to Breath of the Wild, it sold like 25. I'm definitely off by maybe a number here, like 1 or 2 million, but like those are fairly close comparisons.
I think it's close enough.
And it's this difference is substantial, right? We're talking about more than 3 times better in sales for that game. Mario Galaxy, I mean, I'll tell you this, it didn't sell over 20. I don't even think it sold over 10. Mario Galaxy sales compared to Mario Odyssey, which sold over 20 million. These are like the best games on the Wii. Mario Galaxy sold 12.8 according to a Google search, and Mario Odyssey has basically doubled that. Smash Bros. Brawl sold 13.3 million. Smash Ultimate sold about like 25, 26. Like, so basically, games have performed 2 to 3 times better on Switch compared to Wii from like in terms of hardcore efforts there. What was your question, Brandon?
Asked how much Mario Kart Wii sold. I thought it
Well,
was about 20 or 30
according
million.
to this Wikipedia page, it sold 37.32 million.
Pretty good. But
Yeah.
this is kind of more casual.
Yeah, so actually there's a list here, right? So Wii Sports 82.9, which doesn't count because it was a pack-in game. Mario Kart Wii was a pack-in at some point as well. It sold 37.38 million. That's the best-selling game that's like somewhat not casual, although Mario Kart Wii, I mean, Mario Kart's kind of like a casual game, but it's like a bridge title in the sense that casual people like playing it, but then hardcore gamers like playing it too.
Yeah.
But like the top 7 games, like it's Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports Resort, New Super Mario Bros. Wii Play, Wii Fit Plus. The 8th game is Brawl, and then Mario Galaxy. Like there's just a substantial difference here, right? Like you don't see like Ring Fit Adventure or Fitness Boxing being at the very top of the sales chart for Switch. There's a dramatic difference there.
I thought Ring Fit Adventure was in the top 10 at one point. Or close.
I'm not saying it has poor sales, but we're talking about like 2 to 3 million, I think, versus like 20 to 30 million. Like there's a substantial difference. But let's look that up real quick. Ring Fit Adventure.
I thought it sold way more.
It's like it has like an evergreen status, like it's continually sort of selling little by little.
I remember
you know what? You're right.
Pretty well
you're right. Apparently, it's sold 10 point. It's already sold over 10 million.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good.
I was like,
but yeah, I feel like my point still stands. Like the majority
it's an outlier.
It is an outlier because it is also kind of it's a cool game because it's trying to merge like that gamery adventure style with the casual. It's like another bridge title, right? And because it has had strong legs, it's continued to sell over the years since it initially released. But yeah, it's hit 10 million, but 10 million still isn't 20 to 30, right? As some of the top Nintendo games on the Switch. So my ultimate point here is that just games that are core centric sell better on Switch compared to Wii, even though they have similar levels of sort of like units out in the market. And granted, Switch is still has definitely years left. Wii is done, right? And so a lot of these Switch games are going to continue to sell even longer. So that gap of say Twilight Princess being around 7 and Breath of the Wild being around 25, that's gonna widen even more as time goes on.
Right.
So anyway, go on.
I was gonna say, on Nintendo's website, if you were on it, you can still check, I think, like, the total software sales for the Wii. I was interested to know what they were compared to the Switch.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought you were checking. It's kind of what you're waiting for you to say.
No.
Oh, well.
I was actually checking that. I am now.
Okay.
I don't actually have it pulled up.
Okay, I'll check on the chat real quick. Let's see here. Actually, this is an interesting talking point, which goes in a different direction. Giancarlo added me. According to ESRB, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is going to feature suicide implied but featured. So I don't want to talk specifically on that detail, but I do want to talk about the ESRB listing as a whole, because it does state a lot of very dark concepts there, and I feel like in general an ESRB listing shouldn't really tell us too much about a game, but I think this is one of those instances where maybe it tells us a little bit more than we expected. So I'm gonna see if I can pull up the exact ESRB description here. All right, and I'm gonna put it up on the cast so everyone watching can see it as well. That we can read along. All right, so this is the rating summary of the ESRB for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This is a role-playing game in which players follow fighters through a conflict between two nations. From a third-person perspective, players complete quests and engage in melee battle against enemies, examples, animals, creatures, human boss characters. Combat is highlighted by impact sounds, explosions, and cries of pain. Cutscenes depict further instances of violence, characters impaled by sword, a character shooting herself off screen. So notice how it's very descriptive there. It says a character shooting herself off screen, right? So that's suggesting there is a character that is a female that will be, offing herself with with a shooting weapon.
We don't know how important this character is.
Right, but still, it could be just a random side quest. We don't know.
Yeah.
A man stabbing himself off screen. So all this is off screen, right? So there's a lot of implied darkness here, but it may not actually show it. A handful of scenes depict blood, droplets falling from a wounded character, for example, just blood on a character's face. That I do not remember there being blood dripping down, say, Shulk's face in Xenoblade Chronicles 1, even though he definitely got his butt handed to him repeatedly throughout the game. Let's see here. Some fantasy creatures are designed with revealing armor and or anatomy, deep cleavage, partially exposed breasts. I mean, that's
Monosoft.
That's pretty par for the course for Xenoblade games, even in 1 as well. So I don't really think that's that's not a surprise. The words shit and arsehole and bitch appear in the dialogue. This is technically a channel not for kids, so I can say these curse words, but there is some caution, I guess you could say, when I do say them, but because then I'll get demonetized or something, but it's fine. Anyway, I can say these words. Point is, so they use these curse words, which also is par for the course for Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2. They do say these things. They may not open a tray saying, "Oh, you son of a bleeping bleep 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 bleep, I'm gonna bleep the bleep out of you bleep," but they will sneak in son of a, or like there'll be little things like that happen throughout. So they probably won't drop any F-bombs, but there will be some of these more casual curse-ish words that are used. I would say the real news here isn't the cursing, I would say soft cursing and the, sexual designs, because that's also, again, par for the course. But the real, if anything, it's the implications of people offing themselves off screen and the drippage of blood. That does seem to be a bit more on the darker side of things compared to 1 and 2. It's not to say that there aren't dark things that occur in 1 and 2. It's just this seems like some of those cutscenes, like some of those story segments, are gonna have some pretty significant stuff, and if they're actually animating like blood dripping, that could be pretty cool. Now, I can see how they might do it in a very simplistic way. Like, maybe, like, the face is just kind of, like, you know, has a red part, and they'll show the blood dripping, but they won't show the blood dripping while they show the character's face. It'll be, like, two different, like, cuts. Like, imagine, like, you know, it's, like, raining, and a character has their hands on the floor. You don't see the character, like, kind of looking from first-person perspective, and maybe you see, like, a droplet hit the floor. It's, like, red instead of, like, blue for water. And then it'll cut to the character, and you'll just see blood, but you won't see it, like, dripping. It'll just be kind of like a little red gash or something. So there's kind of ways to do that where it's not, like, super, super explicit, maybe. But regardless, I do think there is some hint that maybe this story is a little bit more explicit, a little bit more dark with its suggestive themes than previous games. At the very least, as par for the course, these games do go into those sorts of things already, so it's not like a huge shocker, but maybe a little bit more so than beforehand.
A little more brutal, maybe.
A little.
Little slight bit of, I guess you could say, gore.
Yeah.
Blood. Yeah, I feel like Xenoblade has kind of always had dark stories where a bunch of things happen. I feel like in Xenoblade Chronicles, in the original, well, it's kind of spoilers, I guess, but it's like the very beginning of the game. When Metal Face, at the very beginning of the game, in Colony 9, I think, when he kills that specific person that he does, that's kind of starts off the whole game, he stabs them through, like, their chest, and then you see, like, blood on the claws.
Right, they do that. That's pretty dark.
I would some pretty dark stuff.
I would say that's pretty comparable. Is there even blood dripping?
I don't know if it drips, but I don't know if the Wii could do that.
Right, but how about in Definitive Edition? They still don't make it drip, do they?
I don't think so.
The claws are red, though.
Yeah,
there is definitely a strong. It's also off screen. There is a strong implication that she is impaled with these really long metallic claws, and the claws literally have, like, blood on them. Now, does it show it, like, gooey, dripping down excessively, like a horror movie or something? No. But, yeah, it's evident that she was impaled, and there is blood in the claws from said impaling. So, yeah. Again, par for the course. Now, the real thing that got me is the drippage. Like, if we're actually seeing, like, blood dripping, and it's, like, really nicely animated, that has me interested. Something tells me it's probably more comparable to that scene you just described from Xenoblade Chronicles 1.
That would be probably the more likely thing, in my opinion. Or just something that's like... I mean, blood dripping down a character's face is a lot less...
Yeah. Now, a character shooting themselves, that's pretty dark.
That's pretty dark.
Yeah, it's pretty dark. Yeah.
We've had people sacrifice themselves for others, but I don't know if we've ever had people commit the S word.
The story for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 could get very interesting, and we'll be diving into that as well. But let me just kind of run through the chat here. Let's see. Game walkthroughs added me. Do you think Nintendo will ever revisit the time mechanic like Majora's Mask? So let's see, they had a time mechanic in both Ocarina and Majora's Mask. They had a time mechanic in Twilight Princess. It was just specifically for the Temple of Time. So they played around with time there. Actually, in Skyward Sword as well, with the time shift stones. So the idea that Nintendo could come back to time and use it to impact gameplay in some way, in a very cool, creative way. We've seen them do it multiple times in the Zelda series. In the biggest ones. So I would say, yeah, it could happen again. Now, the difference is, right, as you may have already noted, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, their core concepts, their core gameplay loops are sort of built around time to an extent. Especially Majora's Mask. Yeah. But Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, there are simply particular dungeons, major segments in the game that had a time mechanic that impacts the gameplay in a very interesting, exciting way. But it's just those particular sections of the game. The rest of it doesn't have a sort of ongoing time mechanic. So, if the question is, will we see cool time mechanics used for Zelda gameplay again? Is even something like maybe Breath of the Wild 2? The answer is there's a good chance eventually we will see that again pretty soon because it's been pretty frequent. But if the question is, will we see it be the central sort of like gimmick or sort of element of the primary gameplay loop of the game? I wouldn't say it's impossible, but you know, that is something that's sort of already addressed with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. They're probably be more focused on trying to find something new, but you know, maybe they find something new that's also still relating to time. Actually, we already know that there's a time mechanic in Breath of the Wild 2, because we have the new stasis version that actually reverses the time of a particular object. So there are time mechanics already. Now, is it to the extent of Majora's Mask? You know, no.
Not as far as we've seen.
Not as far as we've seen.
Much, though.
Right.
I doubt that there's gonna be another Zelda game that has like a 3-day cycle or a daily cycle. At least not for a long time. No, Nintendo might visit that concept for something else. I mean, in a kind of a way, Animal Crossing is kind of a game all about time because it's all in real time. Yeah,
it's all in real time, which means it's basically you have to it has to be a part of your life, and you have to schedule things around it.
Animal Crossing is not just a game; it's a way of life.
It kind of is. It kind of is.
That is, yeah, for real.
TC, yes, you guys said it perfectly. I like that I can observe a battle, find a better position, and strategize. It's honestly a breath of fresh air coming from button mash game. So I'll say that I can see there are a lot of people that could button mash Xenoblade in the sense that, okay, I'm just going to blow through all my arts, and then but there's going to come a point where you'll have to sort of wait because they all have a cool-off period.
Yeah. I don't think the game is simple enough and easy enough to where you could just spam all your arts and win every battle. I mean, eventually
it'll work on enemies that you're just blatantly stronger than already, but if there will come a point in the game, several points in the game, if all previous Xenoblade games are anything to go by, there will be several points in the game where like, oh man, no, I actually need a bit of a strategy here. So definitely
I would say especially in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, like if you don't use the systems, like it's either the battles are going to take forever or you're definitely going to lose.
I don't think you can beat the game without the systems unless you just grind forever.
Yeah. You do. It's not like Pokemon where you can get to a higher level and do things, but the main game is kind of like real easy. It's not like that. Like you have to think, strategize, and even for like just the basic stuff.
Yeah. Hello there, Major Blazer. Metroid Prime Xenoblade 3 comes out 2 days after my birthday too, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
That's interesting timing compared to Brandon's. Octo Kraken Splatoon 3 coming in
27th.
Yeah. Octo Kraken Splatoon 3 coming in September is a little weird, especially since it's supposed to come out in summer. So let's talk about that, because you know this will be a bit of a victory lap. So when we got the news of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and I put out my initial analysis, I was telling people, hey, so this release timing is interesting because Splatoon 3 was slated for summer, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was slated for September. And we got more information about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 back in the February Direct than Splatoon, which is very peculiar. And what happened was, and completely unexpected, because I can't think of a time this has happened, at least with Nintendo, where they gave us a fairly specific release date, and they're like, yeah, let's release the game 2 months earlier. I can't think of a time that's happened. If anyone knows anything, has any ideas or examples, please provide in the comments. But like, yeah, that was crazy that happened. But also when it happened, I was like, this tells me Splatoon 3 is probably coming out a little bit after summer. Maybe September, the time Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is coming out. And there was a lot of people in the comments saying, I think you're off base with that assessment. I think you're wrong. I think this has no implication or any sort of influence on Splatoon 3. And it may be the case that it's just entirely coincidental that this occurred in this way. But I feel like history is on my side here. In this, because literally the history is that Splatoon 3 to like 2 or 3 days later, which we usually don't find out answers to these questions so soon after. And the same week even that it is coming out in September, which is a little bit after summer. Although I think you could argue that the very beginning of summer is still technically, the very beginning of September is still technically summer. So, you know, Nintendo didn't really delay it, right? But that's the advantage of never actually giving a specific timing, because you can delay it internally, without ever actually saying it was delayed. Right. For example, Breath of the Wild 2, it's probably been internally delayed several times, but because they never gave us a specific release timing, well, it's only been delayed once so far. So, and hopefully that's the only time it will be publicly delayed.
I'm sure back in 2019 they weren't thinking, we definitely want to get this game out in 2023.
Right, no, I mean, that's...
Or even 2022, probably.
Yeah,
I'm sure they were thinking earlier. There's no way that they purposely were like, yep, 22 release date, we're going to announce it in 2019 and say nothing for years.
Yeah, I think that's just... They thought that maybe they could come out with it pretty quick because they were building it off of Breath of the Wild 1. But it's pretty clear with perhaps an increased sort of ambition for the game and also COVID that no. But anyway, you know, it's fascinating that we're getting Xenoblade Chronicles 3 so early. And Splatoon 3 is not really that far off. September is not that far from now. It's early September, by the way, too. So it's not like I think that's fine. Like, I wasn't mad about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 coming out in September. Like, that was already good news for me. I was like, okay, it is coming out this year. Awesome. You know, like, there was some debate in my head before the release date if it would make it out this year. Because I knew about the Fire Emblem thing. And as it turned out, the Fire Emblem thing, while there may still be an actual legitimate mainline Fire Emblem that's deep in development, that may be next year. The Fire Emblem thing for this year is another Fire Emblem Warriors game. So,
right.
You know, that's not really Fire Emblem, so that even less so gets in the way of Xenoblade. And just to be clear, Fire Emblem and Xenoblade are two very different games, but they're both sort of like RPGs of their own style. And I think there is a little bit of overlap with the fan base for both games. I think Nintendo would want to separate them by a little bit. Like, you know, there's going to be some separation there. It's the main point. So I was thinking that we were only getting one or the other this year. And I was right. It was just Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and not Fire Emblem. So, you know, mainline Fire Emblem. But anyway, that game, it's coming, and it's coming even earlier. And it looks like, you know, basically by not really giving us a hard release date for Splatoon 3, they were able to push it up a little bit because they probably weren't sure if they would be ready for an earlier summer timing. But you also could argue that it was pretty evident that it wasn't going to have an early summer timing, because in the same direct, when they gave us a summertime for Splatoon 3, they already dated games for June with Mario Strikers and the Fire Emblem Warriors game.
Yeah, it was pretty suspicious at the time and pretty obvious. I mean, I was thinking it was fairly likely the game was going to get some sort of delay outside of like where people thought it was going to be like July or June or something like that. I mean, we just hadn't seen like anything of it in a long time, like barely anything. And there were, as you were saying, there were release dates for things in June and things beyond that, and not for this game. And it was really suspicious at the time. So the fact that these two games switched, it didn't shock me too much. But it was a very nice surprise, I say, because as much as I like Splatoon and as much as I'm excited for Splatoon 3, I'm way more excited for Xenoblade 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bigger Xenoblade fan, but I'm also excited for Splatoon as well. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna see more dedicated Xenoblade discussion here just because of our bias for Xenoblade.
Yeah.
And by the way, I did Google the end of summer, and it's September 2022. September 22, in 2022 for this year. But
what was the exact date in September for Splatoon?
September 9th.
9th, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still technically summer.
Right. So it's still technically summer, so it's just the very end of summer. So there you go. Now, in my brain, I don't really like think of seasons in that way, even though that's kind of how they do it. I'm always
Nobody
like, okay,
thinks of seasons in that
like
way.
winter is December, January, February. Spring is March, April, May. Summer's June, July, August, and then fall is September, October, November.
Exactly.
But there is overlap there in terms of actual seasons in certain parts of the world. Yeah, so end of summer there. People are wondering, does this all at all sort of tie into the Breath of the Wild 2 delay?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's possible, right? Let's consider that for a moment. How could it be, right? Because if they already gave us a specific release timing, so obviously something changed where they're like, hey, we should put out Xenoblade Chronicles 3 earlier, which tells us two things. One, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has been ready, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't I don't think it was a situation like, oh, we finished the game early, let's put it out earlier. No.
I don't
This
think
game
so
has been
at
pretty
all.
much done for a little bit already, and they already had the option to put it out earlier. And so they have. But it also means that they had something planned for, I guess, July, right, that wasn't going to make it. So they put Xenoblade Chronicles in there instead. And maybe that is Splatoon 3, and that's it. End of discussion, right? But you could argue Splatoon 3 technically still falls within the timing Nintendo told us, right? Because technically, right, summer doesn't end until September 2022 this year. So it still falls in there. So maybe that was always their plan. I don't think it was. Just personal opinion there. I feel like when you say summer, you don't really mean the very, very end of the summer technically. You usually mean like within the calendar months.
By far the latest release into the year.
But it's also, it gives them wiggle room, right? So that way they can't say they actually delayed it, which is, kind of bad PR. And we're really just talking about the difference of a couple months here. In the grand scheme of things, not a big deal unless you're missing out on like holiday sales.
Right.
So
you're kind of missing out on kids being home for the summer to be able to play the game online with their friends, though.
Good point, right? And typically we see Splatoon games come out a little bit earlier in the year for that reason. It's a really good point.
First one came out in late May, then the second one came out mid-June or mid-July.
Yeah, so I do think most likely, simply kind of talking that out, it makes sense to think that they initially probably wanted it out for like late July. Or early August. That's probably what they were actually aiming for, but they had to push it up just a little bit. But again, I did say we would consider the whole Zelda angle, right? With Breath of the Wild 2 not coming out this year, it does sort of raise a question, will there be some sort of Zelda release for this year? Because as we've seen throughout the entire Switch lifecycle, there's been at least one relatively major Zelda release per year. Breath of the Wild 2017, along with the DLC. 2018, it was Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. 2019, it was Link's Awakening Remake. 2020, it was Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Brand new Breath of the Wild story there. 2021 was Skyward Sword HD. And this year, we thought it was going to be Breath of the Wild 2, but that's been delayed to spring 2023. And I hope spring means March, but it could also maybe mean like May.
That would be weird.
Watch it come out like June 3rd or something. Like, hey, that's technically the spring, sort of, somehow.
God, that'd be such a weird release for a Zelda game.
Yeah, actually, now I'm curious. End of spring 2023. But like, what is the technical time based off the weather
like
and stuff?
June 20th or something.
Right, like, who calls June spring? Right, like it's not. By the way, just so you know, technically Nintendo can release Breath of the Wild 2 at the latest June 21st, and it would still, by the way, they wouldn't do that because that's a Wednesday. They do most of the releases are on Fridays, but technically they could release it on June 21st, and it wouldn't have been incorrect in them saying it comes out spring 2023. Because, yeah. But obviously, June is not spring. But anyway, going back to the point, is there a Zelda release for this year? And does that at all tie into the movement of Xenoblade Chronicles and Splatoon? I don't think so. because I think if there is a Zelda release, it's going to be something that's not as significant as a brand new game like Splatoon 3. Now, given the sales history of Xenoblade and the sales history of things like Skyward Sword and Link's Awakening, I would say that yes, whatever sort of Zelda port they put out, that's technically a bigger deal than Xenoblade Chronicles in terms of sales expectation. So if they can get that out this year, they are going to try and position that in a strong place. But I don't think it's necessarily an indicator of the other delays we saw.
No.
Now, on that note, what would we see, right? Like, I don't think you put Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, assuming that's the Zelda replacement, in, like, the holiday months. I think that's something that comes out a bit sooner. I would have guessed July, like Skyward Sword, but we're getting Xenoblade Chronicles 3 then. Now, maybe we get Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD late September. I can see that.
That's definitely possible.
Yeah.
September wouldn't be a bad month for them. I mean,
or even August.
Awakening.
August is still vacant.
Yeah.
Entirely.
August, we don't know what's going on.
And as we've seen with June, Nintendo's, and a few other months this year, like March, for example, Nintendo's not afraid to release 2 major games in the same month. So we could perhaps see another release in July, right? And they could still maintain that July timing similar to Skyward Sword from last year, and it could just be Wind Waker and Twilight Princess in the same month as Xenoblade. I feel like I want to say they won't do that just because I feel like there's a pretty decent overlap between Xenoblade and Zelda fans. So I think they would want to space out a little bit.
Adventure games.
Big open adventure, fantasy, sci-fi adventure games, right? Like, it hits like a similar sort of demographic there.
There's a reason Microsoft works heavily on Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword.
They know how to make those giant open fantasy sci-fi worlds. That's what they do.
Yep.
Right. So I don't think we'll see them come out in the same month, but again,
probably not.
They could, and I think both can still be successful at the same time. But I feel like there is some consideration with that. Even though we've seen games be successful regardless of when they come out, I still feel like they consider what games are coming out when. I feel like they got to do that, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah. I have a hard time believing Nintendo would release, like, say, Mario Odyssey 2 and 3D Donkey Kong Adventure in the same month. Like, I don't see that happening, So, yeah, if I had to guess, I would say either late September or August if we are getting these Zelda remasters.
I think we're definitely getting something. I don't think Nintendo's just gonna not put out something Zelda, and I do think it's likely that they've had, the ports of the 2 Wii U games.
Let's throw out another idea there since we're talking about Zelda for a bit. There were rumors that there was going to be an HD Ocarina of Time. What if they took the 3DS remakes of Ocarina of Time, maybe even Majora's Mask, and they bring those instead, but they're upscaled to 1080p, and obviously they rework the controls and the UI so it can be on one screen and on the Switch. Pretty cool, actually.
I would like that.
And I would also say they give 3D camera control to both, since they were able to do it for even Skyward Sword, which had the necessity to have motion control attacking with that analog stick, and they still had it inputted in there. I would say
100%
they would do that. Majora's Mask has it, so why not do it for Ocarina of Time?
New 3DS nub.
Yeah, so that'd be pretty cool. It's like a remastering, a remake, but
I would like that. I think it'd be a lot more work, and it might be something that they want to put more time in instead of being something that they release quickly because of a delay. And I feel like having Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are just easier things that they don't need to put a lot of time in. They can just be like, oh, we had to delay this? Okay.
What if they just do like a quadrilogy? Let's just grab
these and put them out.
What if they put out all 4?
That sounds... I mean, I would love it, but I don't think it would happen just because of how much more work they would need to put into the 3DS remakes.
And here's another idea. What if we see a Zelda spin-off? What if it's not like another remaster? What if we just see like another Zelda spin-off that isn't Age of Calamity? Like, that might be nice to see.
It has to be ready. It also has to be something that they're willing to put out, like, close.
What if they've been working on a Zelda Maker?
Relatively close to Breath of the Wild.
What if they're working on a Zelda Maker?
That'd be cool.
And it's very different from what Breath of the Wild 2 would be. It would be more. It would be it would be basically building up Zelda 2 dungeons, 2D Zelda.
And they
dungeons
could release like
top-down.
a multiplayer game too.
Right, we haven't seen a Four Swords game in a long time. What if we got like a Four Swords game? That'd be awesome, you know? Because we've seen Nintendo be working on Four Swords games, 2D Zelda, like separate from Four Swords, and 3D Zelda all at the same time. You know, I can see something like that happening. That would be pretty neat.
My only hesitation is they have to have these. It would have mean that the game would have like been scheduled for next year, and it would have had to be like ready for this year too. Like, I'm just trying to think, like, is there something that they have?
Here's an example of how that
like
might not be the case, though. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, they were clearly sitting on. Right? It's not the first time we've seen Nintendo do that. We know in 2017 they were sitting on Mario Odyssey pretty much all year.
Right.
There are some games that they do sit on for a bit.
They were still working on optimizing it.
Polishing
but it was pretty much
optimizing
done. It could have released, but it wouldn't have been it would have been like the 900p image we got. It would have been the original like 720p kind of less optimized version. But technically, it still would have been Mario Odyssey. It still would have run fine. It would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been as good. And I have a feeling that's kind of where Xenoblade is now, where they could release it today if they wanted to, but you know they're still working on optimizing it and stuff. And it's done enough to where they can put it out 2 months early and it won't affect it. But they're still kind of working on optimizations. That's kind of where I imagine the game is. But obviously, we don't know that for sure.
Yeah. You know, there's the other consideration here is that maybe they're just not a Zelda release this year. Like,
I would be shocked. Like, I feel like it would be so
well, if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out, but if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out March, which to me is what spring really means usually.
Yeah.
By the way, just so you have some examples you've never heard this feel before, right? Kirby was slated for spring, and while I thought it would be weird to release Kirby in the same month as Triangle Strategy and not too far removed from Legends Arceus, they still released it in March, right? So that springtime is still held for the end of the fiscal year. Monster Hunter Rise, end of the fiscal year, March. Animal Crossing, end of the fiscal year, which was, you know, for spring, March, right? Breath of the Wild, same time. I think basically getting out these major games by the end of the fiscal year, which happens at the end of March, is a big deal for Nintendo because they want that game out as part of the financial report for the entire year, for their investors and such. There's just a lot of reason to get it out by then. So while there can be games that will come out afterwards, typically they will come out.
April and May have much smaller releases.
Yeah,
up until like June or July.
Like,
and then it picks back up.
For example, are there April games this year? Yes, and we're getting Nintendo Switch Sports in like a week, right? It's coming out next Friday. Yeah, it is. Actually, it's coming out next Friday. This Friday.
Yep.
At the end of the week. Yeah, it is. Yeah, 4 days from now. Wow, that's crazy. So we'll be talking about that next week for sure. But ooh, I get to play that. All right. All right. Yeah, so like, you know, can they release games in April? Yes, but with, like, for example, with Switch Sports, they announced the game and its release date all in one direct, right? And so I think basically, you know, if it's a game that's already known and it has a targeted springtime, it's probably fair to assume that they're aiming for a March, especially if it's something major like a Breath of the Wild 2. You know,
they're just not gonna put it out in April or May. They want to get it out, even if it was like, even if it was slightly buggy, they would release it in March. Like, they would get the game by then, just because the boost to their numbers is just insane for that type of game. Like, you know, that's gonna be a 10, 20 plus million seller. You're gonna want to get that out in March. Yeah.
So, you know, let's assume that I'm right here, right? And I mean, you seem to agree with me, but, you know, delays are possible. But assuming Breath of the Wild 2 comes out and it does kind of match what this pattern suggests, and it comes out in March. That's not too far.
It doesn't get delayed outside of spring. it will release in March. If it doesn't release in March, I think they would delay it to like later in the year.
Yeah. Can I see Breath of the Wild 2 being a summer release? I don't think that's crazy. Especially if, like, say 3D Mario is ready for the holiday next year, right?
Yeah.
So I can see that maybe happening. But yeah, so assuming Breath of the Wild 2 comes out in March, which I think there's a pretty damn good chance at this point, that's not too far into next year. Like, we're talking about 3 months, right? Like, how much of a gap can we reasonably have between one Zelda and another? I think it's got to be half a year, right? So that's another point just to argue why there wouldn't be like a Zelda remaster at the end of the year. One, because you don't release games that have already been remastered once as a second remastered port as your holiday release, but two, Breath of the Wild 2 is not too far off. So I think if they do it, it's got to be, you know, summer or fall, early fall, not late fall, which is why I'm thinking either July, probably not July, but more likely August or late September. Yeah. So that's kind of like the window I can see a Zelda remaster maybe coming out, or Zelda really anything. The more different it is, the closer up it could come out, or later to the year I think it could come out, but also like I don't see a Zelda maker being the major holiday release in November alongside Pokemon. I just feel like that would be like a summer, maybe early fall release. Like I think regardless of what it'll be something like that. Yeah. If it is Wind Waker Twilight Princess, it's gonna be interesting to see how they handle that. Will they be packaged together? Will it just be one? How much will be changed around? I imagine not much.
Will we get 60 frames per second, please, Nintendo? That's like the one thing. Like, I don't care if they just keep everything else the same. I would like to see 60 FPS. I'll buy it, even if it's just 30, but 60 FPS, and I'll pay 60 for each.
I feel just like because they are games that have already gotten the HD remaster treatment on the Wii U years ago, right? Like they're not brand new original games.
Right.
Because they've already gotten the remastered treatment, I think Nintendo will be willing to not price them individually at $60. You know, like for example, can you imagine Nintendo putting out Skyward Sword HD again for Switch 2 for $60? Because that would basically what they would be doing if they were to do that now. Because they both just got HD remaster treatments on Wii U. So I think that if they do come, maybe they are sold separately on the eShop for like $40, but you can buy them together for 60. I could see them doing like a deal like that.
It could be like Bayonetta 1 and 2, where I think they were 20 each. I don't think they'll be 20 each, but you know, you could buy them separately. And they were like, I think they were 20 or 30 each. Yeah. And then they just the price just added up to the full.
I think there at one point there was a discount for Bayonetta 1, but if you just got Bayonetta 2, it's like still like $40-$50 or something, but you might get Bayonetta 1 at a discount if you were to do something like that. That might have been on Wii U though.
I forget.
There's been a few different like sort of promotional discounts or with both games in mind. So yeah, but I can see it like a pricing structure, something like that though. So you know,
I would be fine if they were 30 each, and then it's a $60 for both. I'd be happy with that
if you keep it simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also feel like Nintendo would want. I'm thinking Nintendo trying to get the most money, right? So packaging them individually for $40. As opposed to like I do think 30 might be a little low even for Nintendo. I mean, you know, like
honestly, they're probably just gonna release them both at 60, even though they came out for 50 each on the Wii U, and we're just gonna have to deal with it.
I think they come out for. I mean, maybe I think 30 is a little bit on the low end, but I'm thinking 40. But I think that range individually. I really don't see them selling them for 60 when they've already gotten the remaster treatment.
That's what I would hope, but it's just Nintendo, so I feel like they're gonna do it.
I don't think so. I really don't.
Well, let's hope you're right.
Yeah. So just I guess to kind of wrap the whole like timing situation, I don't think the Zelda thing really impacted the decision. I think it was more of a making sure that they have a July release, a major one, and I think Splatoon 3 wasn't ready, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was, and that's what they did.
Yep, I definitely agree. It definitely feels that way, just with the strangeness of the fact that everybody expected it in July, and now that, and we already knew that was going to be in September, and now this is coming in July, and Splatoon's coming in September. So, I mean, there's just too many coincidences. It definitely feels like that's exactly
I do
what
feel like
happened.
Splatoon 3 was already not super likely for July, because if they were dating games in June, why couldn't they date Splatoon 3 for July? You know, like, just kind of weird. But,
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it's coming out in September, so. But let's check in with the chat here, see how you guys are doing, what you guys are saying. Hello there, Major Blazer. Excuse me. My chat jumped, I got lost, and I just coughed. Because I'm allergic to confusion.
Andres hit himself with confusion.
And indeed I did, I hurt myself in confusion. Let's see here. Tamale Muncher, to be honest, I'm Xenoblade Chronicles 1 over 2, but they're both dope. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people prefer 1
I
over
would
2.
say there's a lot of aspects, like I prefer the story overall, the characters overall in the first game. But I prefer the battle system of 2. I also prefer the world generally in 1. I feel like 2, there was a lot less reason to explore. There was still stuff to find, but I feel like it was less of it and it was less interesting. But overall, I don't know which one I prefer.
I like both. So, you know.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Super Chris 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 didn't have gacha mechanics. It did, though.
It did, you just didn't have to pay for them. There was no microtransactions.
Yeah, there were no microtransactions.
So it was just tedious.
Yeah, there was nothing about it that was sleazy or like trying to money grub. It was simply them trying to think of ways to like keep people playing and talking about it, I guess. They thought that'd be a cool mechanic. And interestingly, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 seems to not be focusing on having a massive amount of potential blades or characters you can use. Right. Hence the gacha mechanic in 2, but rather they're focusing on 6 core characters, and each of these characters can fuse into the Ouroboros. I may be pronouncing that wrong, but it's kind of close to Ouroboros. So they can fuse, and then they can sort of interchange their classes. So there's a number of combinations there, right. And there's actually even a 7th party member who's interchangeable. Yeah. So I'm assuming as you progress throughout the game. So there are a number of characters you can use, but there's a core 6 that explore the world together, which is really awesome. And all 6 are fighting in battles at once, which is also, you know, right. A huge step up, because it used to just be 3. So that's sick. That is just pretty darn cool to see there.
I mean, if you think of it as like, because before you would have, you know, the driver and the blade, and there would be 3 drivers, 3 blades. So technically, you had 6 before. So if you think of it, they kind of work in pairs now, and the pairs, like, each, I think it's like Noah and Mio, for example, they fuse together for the Ouroboros. I don't think that they can just fuse with anybody. I'm pretty sure they have to fuse with like a certain person.
From what we've seen, there's 3 met pairings, and that's all we know. It's implied that that's it. Could there be more? That wouldn't shock me, but as far as we know, it's just the 3 pairings. I don't think they need to do more, right? I think they can, you know, they can show more depth in different ways. And ultimately, that's the main point to be made here, since we kind of went on to this from the gacha mechanics. Instead of doing something like the gacha mechanics, they're just giving us 6 characters and focusing on them. Well, 7th character. There's a 7-member party system, and
apparently,
and that's more focused.
Blades, according to Nintendo's Twitter. Have you seen that post?
There's been a few story elements that have been sort of accidentally leaked. Like there was
I saw one that was like they can only fight for a certain amount of years. Like they're kind of just born like the born to fight live.
Apparently, and I don't remember exactly where it said. You're right. There half of them I think are only live for 10 years. For some apparent reason, that's a big driving force in the story.
I assume it's 10 years. or I guess they're blade. Apparently they're blades, so maybe they're just born that old, so they only live 10 years, but they just look like they're that old. I don't know, because they're not 10 years old. So it was I don't know. I'm kind of confused. I need more information. These Twitter posts are very vague and spread out, and then they keep deleting them.
So we got breaking news, guys.
Ooh, breaking news!
Breaking news. Some of you may have already heard it. If you haven't, well, you're hearing it now. I saw a tweet from Nintendo from 9 o'clock, so I'm 20 minutes late, but I mean, I went live, like, shortly before that. This is Nintendo of America. I'm double checking. It has a check. Literally, it says at Nintendo America. So this appears to actually be Nintendo of America. And this is what it says. This is Miyamoto. After consulting with Chris-san, my partner at Illumination on the Super Mario Bros. Film, we decided to move the global release to spring 2023, April 28 in Japan, and April 7 in North America. My deepest apologies, but I promise it will be well worth the wait. There's the update. So,
Okay.
the Mario movie is not coming out this holiday.
Wow.
Which means we may not get a trailer at this summer either. We might, I think they might wait later into the year. Heck, I mean, yeah, that's crazy.
Maybe the Game Awards. Oh gosh, imagine if we have to wait all the way to the Game Awards to see the first trailer for this movie.
I don't know if I don't know if it'll be the first trailer then, but I do think
maybe September again.
Regardless of whether the first trailer comes out, I think there will be a Mario trailer at the Game Awards. That just kind of seems like 100% perfectly fitting. I'd be shocked if there is not a Mario movie trailer at the Game Awards. Unless there's some sort of weird rights licensing issue holding them back, there will be a Mario trailer at the Game Awards. I could be off base here, but I really don't think I am. I think that could happen. So, just kind of my thoughts on that. Yeah. This is not a big deal. It's not a game, so I'm not losing sleep over it. Because they haven't even shown us a trailer of the Mario movie, I'm not even really anticipating it yet,
I barely even feel like it's a real thing at this point. Like,
maybe it's just me.
Feel real yet.
Maybe it's just me, but it probably is just a me thing. Because I definitely used to anticipate movies a lot, but lately I don't anticipate movies. Really,
I don't know, man. Like, there's been some movies like Spider-Man: No Way Home. I anticipated that movie.
Well, if I see the trailer, I'm like, oh man. So I guess I'm just more a casual movie fan. I think that's just really what it is. I'm just so focused on playing and talking about games that I just don't have the time to nerd about other stuff as much. I do watch animated movies. It's just
I was so excited for the Batman, so excited for Spider-Man: No Way Home, but in general, every other movie, I'm just I could take it or leave it. I don't really care.
I kind of just watch them when they come out.
There's very few movies that I have to see in theaters and stuff.
Yeah. I'm usually not like, oh man, I have to wait months. There's not that yearning for me, really. I mean, honestly, even with video games, it's usually not the case.
Yeah.
Now there's a few exceptions. I want to see how Metroid Prime 4 looks. Right. I want to learn more about Breath of the Wild 2.
For sure. There are those big tentpole releases that I'll always be incredibly hyped for. But,
I think for me, it's just there's so much for me to be excited about and to think about. I don't have time to anticipate, I guess.
Yeah, there's so much coming out all of the time.
Yeah, if you're fans of movies, of video games, and anime, there's just so many cool projects that are in the works that it's hard to, if you focused on all of them, you just don't have time. You don't have time to anticipate too much, right? But if you're just focused on a couple, then you probably will be like, damn it, I gotta wait 3 months for this, or 2 years for this, or what have you.
As I've gotten older, the genres of games that I've liked has expanded, and there's just more things that I'm interested in. In a typical Direct, I feel like these days, if you watch a Nintendo Direct these days and there's nothing that interests you, you need to expand your horizons. Become you're too focused on one small little niche. It's like those people who complain that there's not their specific game in every single Direct because it's the only thing you care about, and it's not like that's a bad thing. I'm just saying maybe you should expand your horizons. It's not Nintendo's fault that you only like the one tiny little genre. I think there's some people who need to like try new things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done that, over the past couple of years, or not even the past like years, just like in my teens through my adult years, as I feel like expanded my horizons and things. And there's a ton of stuff out there that I didn't think I would like. And it's like good stuff.
Yeah. By the way, in case anyone's wondering, this is not how my arm normally looks. I mentioned that I took a hard fall last Sunday, and all this bruising you see, right? I hope it's not too grotesque for people, is just because I sprained it. Yeah, I fell and I landed. I normally roll into my falls, but it was a very sudden thing because the floor was wet and it wasn't expected, and I had to brace myself like this, even though I normally roll into them all the time, my falls when I'm playing sports. And just so you have an idea of how bad the sprain was, I landed here. This is fine. Whoa. It looks clean, right? All this is just from internal muscles tearing from the impact, right? And that's just, my body recovering. But, it's fine. It's getting better. Oof. So don't worry. Yeah. It's just recommended that I don't really lift weights or anything for maybe at least another week, potentially 2. I don't want to be off exercising my arms for that long, but we'll see. Yeah. It's not broken, though. Probably. It's not. I think. I wouldn't be able to do stuff like this. I wouldn't be able to, like, do everything normal if it wasn't. And this doesn't really hurt, by the way. Like, there's, like, some minor awkwardness because it's all the tearings around the elbow. But, I'm okay. Yeah, Joyce J, thank you for pointing out. I did eventually see that notification on my phone that it was delayed. I think a few people were trying to let me know that the Mario movie got delayed. But I have Nintendo's Twitter account on my notifications. So whenever Nintendo announces something, I see it on my phone. Yeah. Well, brings up an interesting question, though. Maybe they moved up Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because of Advance Wars. I don't know if they would do it for that, but it does sort of make me wonder when that game is coming. I can see that coming out in the same month of Xenoblade, actually. I could see it being like an early July release. I don't think that's a stretch. I don't think I would hope that it's not delayed too long. I know the reason they delayed it was because of, the situation with the war. But I also don't think the game should be delayed until like next year necessarily, right?
Yeah. It's tricky because we have no idea how long the conflict in Ukraine will go on.
Well, do you think they wait until the conflict literally ends before they release the game?
That's what I'm saying. Like, we don't know how long that is. Like, if you go off of things like Afghanistan, it might never end.
Right. So does the game just go unreleased at that point?
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
I don't think you do that.
At this point, I think you delay it like a month or 2 for respect, and then you just release it.
Yeah. It's not. I don't. In my opinion, I don't think that would be disrespectful. It's, No.
I mean, they didn't have to delay it at all.
Yeah, I don't think they had to. They did it. Yeah, I thought. I don't think they would have gone
blasted or anything. Like Nintendo wouldn't have gone canceled or anything over it. I don't think.
There'll always be someone that would disagree, but
I'm sure somebody out there would get upset.
I mean, it's also like Advance Wars. Like, it's a toon-based strategy game that's very lighthearted.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yes, it touches on the concepts of war, but it's not like Call of Duty, for example.
No. But I do understand why they did it, and I respect them for it. But it's not like it would have been the end of the world if they didn't. And if they release it next month, then it's not gonna it's not gonna really matter in the end.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I should change the title of the podcast to Mario Movie Delayed, but I don't know where to put it in because I already kind of used up a lot of words. We're pretty much done with the Mario topic. I can put it. What I can do is I can just add to the description.
Yeah, there you go. Put in the tags.
The Mario movie.
Man, I really hope the movie's good.
I'm optimistic.
I hope it's like the Sonic movie and it's actually good. I haven't seen the second one though. You seen the second one yet?
The Sonic stuff? I haven't seen the first one.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. I just didn't see it. I did see Man of the North last weekend, and the weekend before that I saw the Batman. So I've been better about watching my movies lately.
Man of the North.
I don't know.
Like North? I thought it was called Northman.
I don't know. I watched it in a different country, so the title might have been a little different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
It's interesting. It's not. I don't know if I would say it's like a masterpiece, but it's a compelling watch. I'll say that.
It looks cool. But I've only seen like the poster. I haven't seen any of the trailers or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know about it. I was just with some family, like, hey, let's watch a movie. And I'm like, which one? And I'm like, oh, I guess that's cool. Let's do it. And it was cool. So
nice.
Yeah. Joyce G, as long as they don't surprise us with another Triforce Heroes. Sorry, not a fan of multiplayer Zelda. I'll tell you that if they were to announce Triforce Heroes or a Four Swords game, there's a decent chance I would not get it. But, you know, the last time those came out, that was a while ago, back when I didn't buy as many games because I was younger and I have as much financial means. So maybe it might be a little different for me now. It kind of depends. I guess they would have to announce the game and I would have to see it. And based off what I see, I'll decide if I want it or not, you know? So we'll see there.
Well, we got to play it together online.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think that was the thing that people don't like about like Triforce Heroes. It's kind of hard to play with other people, and the level design was not as great as Four Swords.
Yeah, they definitely need to
a
have an
better
online
version
one.
of the same concept.
Mm-hmm.
It still works. Like,
yeah, that'd be cool.
And I like the fact that there's actually a multiplayer Zelda game. You don't have to have like 20 million. Like, you don't have to have an insane setup like you do to play Four Swords.
Yeah. So, you know, that would be an advantage to a new Four Swords on Switch. Just having a decent online sort of proportion. Yeah, I see a number of people, as I progress in chat, I see a lot of people are trying to get me to hear about the Mario news. So thank you guys, I appreciate that. Keep me on top of the news there. Tamale Muncher. Zelda Four Swords is pretty dope for a multiplayer Zelda. I think it was a neat idea to make one multiplayer. Yeah, I agree. You know, having like a multiplayer series, you know, perhaps for example, maybe Metroid can have like a Hunter series or a Federation Force series, you know, like as options as well. As long as you still have like the mainline 2D and mainline 3D. Like, I think there's room to have all of that. I mean, we also already have the Warriors games for Zelda, right? There's already been 2, so like there could conceivably be a third one. We're getting a second one for Fire Emblem, so you know this may not be the end of Fire Emblem or Zelda Warriors. And as perhaps Xenoblade grows in popularity, maybe that becomes the next Warriors game, for example. I think that would actually fit really well because Xenoblade literally is about different races having wars in a sci-fi fantasy environment, so it fits. Yeah, the Zesty Car saying the Northman. Again, like I said, I might have... It's not that I misremember the title. I think the title is just a little... I might have misremembered the title, but it also could just be I watched a different country where the verbiage of it was a little different because it's in a different language.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay, spoiler. I if you didn't know, I went to another country to get a cat. And said cat is sleeping like a little baby right behind me. So, yeah, she's a baby. Yeah. Let's dive into, though, just kind of like some of the updates Nintendo's been putting out for their games, specifically Splatoon and Zelda. I mean, not Zelda. I wish Zelda. Xenoblade. Because there's certain things. I want to talk about that
Xenoblade trailer.
There's a lot to sort of sift through here. I mean, let's focus on Splatoon for a bit first, because we talk more about Xenoblade, and then we'll dive into Xenoblade. Because I'm sure some people want to hear us talk about Splatoon besides the release timing. Like, I guess in truth though, like I don't have much to say because we got turf war gameplay, which looks really good, by the way.
Just the most basic mode.
And they give us a release timing. Now, I think there are some interesting things to note here, though. It's not like just nothing to talk about. I thought the gameplay looked very clean. It looks like a highly polished Splatoon game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, you can tell they definitely have worked with the UI a little bit. The visuals, I think, are pretty strong. There's some cool things like that crab turret thing. Awesome.
Yeah, the
like,
crab turrets
yeah,
looks dope. A
that
lot
looks
of
really
the
cool.
specials look really, really cool.
They really do. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to play it for sure. But what
I just
really,
wish they had
go on.
shown off like a brand new mode or something that makes Splatoon 3 special compared to Splatoon 2, but they haven't. Other than the
Yet.
single player stuff, they haven't really shown us
Yet.
that, and I feel like we need to see that. We
At
don't
this
have to see
point,
that
you
right
might
this
you
second,
could argue
but-
it's just more of the same.
Yep, a lot of people calling it Splatoon 2.5, which is the exact same thing they did with Splatoon 2, calling it Splatoon 1.5.
And then Splatoon 1 was 0.5
Yeah.
until all the updates came out. Like it seems
Because
par
yeah,
for the course.
the updates add like a whole like doubling of the content essentially
Yeah,
each time Splatoon comes out.
but you know, there is another bit of news that came out alongside of this that to me is even more huge. Like, I'm excited for Splatoon 3, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm more excited for Splatoon 3 than this news. Like, when I get to play Splatoon 3, it's going to take up a much bigger part of my life. But this news, I think, is more groundbreaking in terms of changing or providing evidence as to what direction Nintendo's headed in. And that's that Splatoon 2 Octo Expansion DLC is being added to the Nintendo Expansion Pack.
Oh yeah.
So, I haven't played the Octo Expansion yet. Brandon, you have, though, correct?
Yes.
So this
I
is
have played
great
it.
because you can give me a bit more perspective on this. But, correct me if I'm mistaken, but the Octo Expansion is more of a single-player experience rather than a multiplayer one.
Completely. Yeah.
Okay.
It's essentially a whole other story campaign.
So what's exciting
Single
about
player,
that,
completely.
right, is that you and I have been speculating for the last few months that Nintendo's going to continue to add DLC stuff. And I was on the side of optimism saying, hey, I think Nintendo's going to continue to add DLC packs, maybe one per direct. At this point, it's actually at a faster rate than one per direct because we've only had 2 directs since the expansion pack has come out, September and February. And yet here we are with 3 major DLC packs now for free on the expansion pack. So they could be accelerating things a little bit here, although maybe the summer direct comes around and it doesn't happen, right? That's a possibility too. We'll actually get to that as well, because these release dates could have some indication in terms of when we get more Nintendo news. We'll talk
feel
about
like
that
it
about.
depends on how many subscribers they're getting. Because I have a feeling that they're adding them because they're not getting as many subscriptions as they had hoped.
I don't know. That is an
it-
interesting point. Like, is this more of a reactive move? I don't know if it's a reactive move because they also announced that Splatoon 3 is coming out in September, right? Like, I think they just announced it then because they dated Splatoon 3 and they wanted to give Splatoon fans something to get excited about in the meanwhile, which could bring in a few more people to the Nintendo expansion pack that were already sort of on edge about getting it, right?
Right.
So, you know, that's my take on it. Like, is it possible that they were like, oh man, numbers are down, let's announce this? I don't know. It could be both, though, right? I think regardless,
part of
it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're suffering in terms of sales. They just were like, hey, look, this is a good opportunity to market this because we want it to sell more, right? It doesn't have to be a bad thing per se that they're announcing this. They're just announcing this because obviously, yes, they want more people to buy it.
Right. I'm also saying that it could be part of whether or not, you know, the timing for their future DLCs, like, because right now we're getting a bunch, but if that works and they get more subs, they might slow down. But if it's not working as well as they hope, maybe they'll add more content quicker. So it could also affect it in that way.
Yeah. But the point I wanted to bring up, because when I was asking about the single player multiplayer thing, is that Splatoon 2 is a multiplayer experience, and both Animal Crossing and Mario Kart are more of a multiplayer things. Now, I mean, Animal Crossing is kind of like you could go either way with that one.
Yeah.
But the point is that the Octo expansion is exclusively single player, right?
Yep.
So there was the argument that if it didn't take advantage of the online element of Nintendo Switch Online, then why would they do it? But here we now pretty much have full confirmation that Nintendo's just going to give us DLC of their big games. That's just what they're going to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's single player or multiplayer. So that has a huge implication there. And maybe you're right, Brandon, they announced it earlier because they want some to get more sales bolstered there, and there won't be an announcement, say, in a summer direct for another DLC pack. They could go either way, but either way, like at the very least, worst case scenario, we're pacing one DLC per direct, and that currently, as things stand, we're ahead of that pace, right? So if the next direct comes and we don't get one, okay, then we're on pace for one DLC per direct. But at this point, it seems like we're ahead of that pace, and that thing is pretty good. If we're getting like 3 to 4 DLC packs of major Nintendo games per year on the expansion pack, along with them adding more N64 games, more Sega Genesis games, and perhaps like a Game Boy Advance or something in the future, I think that's going to go a long ways towards making this seem like a meaningful, actual like paid service. I think they're actually doing a pretty good job, because every month or so we're getting pretty good news for this, right? Like they're continually adding stuff. So I think it may not have sold everyone yet, right? But they are doing stuff. They've improved the emulation. They're still adding one quality N64 game per month. They're adding Genesis games. They're adding good DLC like packs here.
The DLC is kind of saving the expansion pack, because I don't think what they're doing with N64 and Sega Genesis, I think, games is even close to worth it for the amount of money they're charging.
I hear you.
Like I wouldn't even think about buying the service just for that.
I hear you.
It's way too much. But these DLC packs are kind of coming in and saving the day. So I feel like with the initial package with the Animal Crossing pack, it was worth it if you liked Animal Crossing, but pretty much everybody else I didn't think would really care that much unless you like had to play N64 or Genesis on your Switch for some reason.
Yeah.
But nowadays, there's kind of something for a lot of different people. These are all big games, and that cover different genres. And I think they're kind of trying to get a little bit of something for every type of player. And I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming more and more well-rounded. I think it's a great point. And as time goes on, I think it's only going to improve. Now, something else to note here, though, is that Splatoon 3 is coming out after Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And it seems that they're using Splatoon 2 DLC to sort of help to market Splatoon 3 a little bit and help to tide things over for fans. But they're not doing the same thing for Xenoblade, because there is the equivalent to Octo Expansion would be Torn of the Golden Country. They're fairly comparable in terms of what they are for each respective, predecessor. But they're not doing it for Xenoblade. Why is that? I think the answer is pretty obvious. Maybe it's not that obvious, but I think the answer is, well, look at the games that are getting their DLC on there. Mario Kart, 30 plus million. Animal Crossing, 30 plus million. Splatoon, it's like 15 plus million or something like that. So these are all some of the best-selling franchises on the Nintendo Switch that are getting the DLC. And we've actually talked about this before, Brandon. The DLC that, before we knew about Splatoon, we were talking about, hey, it looks like Nintendo is targeting DLC for games that have a lot of sales already. Because they're not even releasing brand new games, but rather DLC on the expansion pack. And they're doing it for games that already a lot of Switch owners have. Why are they doing that? Because they have the most impact because of the amount of people that have them, right? So they want the most reach. The most reach, which increases the most sales potential for the expansion pack. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has sold 2.5 million. Like, there's a substantial difference in ratio here for Xenoblade versus Splatoon. So obviously it makes sense to do Splatoon.
Much more expensive DLC, because I think, isn't it $40?
Sure, but I don't think.
Whereas Octo Expansion is only a $20 DLC pack.
I hear you there.
And Mario Kart's only $25, and Animal Crossing's only $25. So
maybe that has something to do with
significantly more expensive DLC.
That could have something to do with it there too.
It's practically its own game.
It has its own physical release. So it's a good point. Like, you can, I think you can buy Torna. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can buy Torna without buying Xenoblade 2.
Yeah, you don't need Xenoblade 2 to play Torna. It's very hard to actually find copies of those these days, but if you can, then
so it's basically like its own separate Xenoblade release.
Yep,
like
it is its own app.
It can be. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be.
Right. And that's cool. That's cool. I mean, it's also kind of like an explanation. It's like, hey, look, we're giving you another Xenoblade game 6 to 8, 9 months later, but it's not as big because, well, it's DLC. But, you know, it's almost like it is its own game. It's just, I guess you would say it's short for a Japanese RPG, but 20 to 30 hours is long for a lot of games, just not RPGs.
Yeah.
But for as an expansion adventure, it's definitely pretty sizable.
I think I put like 30 to 40 hours in.
Yeah,
But I almost
that
100%ed it.
Yeah,
The only thing I didn't get is like the special monsters. But those are very tedious and you don't actually get much reward. But I did every single of the side quests in the whole game.
Yeah, that's impressive. I don't remember how much hours I put in. I know I put at least 20. I think I was definitely approaching 30 if I didn't pass it. Yeah, I think
I'd say Torna is one of my favorite Xenoblade experiences. I think the graphics are much more polished than 2. They kind of look more like 3, although I think 3 has more stuff going on. And then the gameplay is just really, really refined compared to 2 as well.
Yeah. You know, something else, just kind of thinking here, I could see them adding Fighters Pass 1 and 2 to the expansion pack.
Oh, yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah. That's another point to be made here is that the Mario Kart and Animal Crossing DLCs were new when they were announced. Octo Expansion is an old DLC. So Nintendo's showing that they're willing to go back to old DLC packs as well.
That is a great point. There's tons of old packs that they can go back to if they want.
Yeah. So
Smash is definitely the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah. When I first saw this announcement, another that came to mind was actually Champion's Ballad. Like they could add all the Breath of the Wild 2 DLC closer to release of that, right? You know, maybe what they do this
Xenoblade
year.
Chronicles 2 actually does have a DLC expansion outside of Torna that they could add, but I don't think it's enough content that they would.
Right, I feel like they would just add the whole thing. I think. I don't know. It's a little weird because like Octo Expansion is like its own like sort of marketed thing, as is the other two. It's a little tricky there. Yeah, I mean, I think if they were to do it, they would do it together. So maybe they don't mark it as Champion's Ballad. Maybe it's just like Breath of the Wild 2 Waves 1 and 2 DLC.
Yeah, it would be both, but
yeah.
I think could definitely add that like when they could announce that whenever they do the big blowout.
Right, and I think the important thing another thing to note here though is that Octo Expansion's been out since 2018, right? Yeah. So it's so many years afterwards that I don't think they're making fans feel burned who bought it separately earlier. Maybe there are some people who bought. Do you feel burned by this because you did pay for it?
No.
Okay.
I don't care. I paid for the privilege to pay it or play it. Nice English to play it 4 years early. Yeah,
I'm also. I don't know if you guys have noticed. I am also struggling to talk because I'm fully congested right now. But I'm trying.
I just have a speech impediment. That's my excuse.
I'm just a little sick. Physically. But the implication is that I could be. I'm fine. Anyway.
He's dying, folks.
I'm fine.
Rip Andres.
Yeah.
This is actually his ghost.
I'm a ghost. You got me. Not in the flesh.
He started his life after he died.
As a phantom.
Yeah.
Andres Phantom. There'll be a Nickelodeon cartoon about me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's check on the chat here. Actually, there's an interesting point that Zalado brings up that I want to sort of discuss here. So Zalado added me and said, "Don't you think it's weird that they are announcing these release dates already at random and not even on a direct? It gives me 2020 vibes, and that's not good." So,
I feel like we're in a time where we're kind of in between directs, but we still needed to know this information because it's coming out like right after when the next direct will be. Like, I think the June area is like right there, and then, Xenoblade's coming out in July. And we didn't know what was happening with Splatoon, and I feel like that we needed to know.
All right,
So
yeah,
I
this is
feel like
still
we're just kind
April.
of in that in-between area where there's not gonna be a direct right now. There just is not usually a direct at this time of the year, typically. There can be like game-specific directs, but generally there's not like normal general directs. If there is a February direct, there normally isn't one now. So I just feel like it's kind of they needed to announce things, but it's not a general direct time of the year. It's just how it is.
Yeah,
I don't
so
think it's anything crazy.
I think you bring up a good point. I'm inclined to agree with you, Brandon. But this is not the first time that this argument has come up, or this concern. Like it seems to be the case that pretty much every time there's a Nintendo Direct that's on the way, like the month or two beforehand, Nintendo will make a few sort of somewhat significant announcements, and people start to consider, oh, does this mean that there won't be a Direct when we expect it to? And I kind of understand that, because that was basically what we saw back in 2020, right? But that was the pandemic year. Now, some people were concerned because E3 has been canceled this year. Will Nintendo have a summer show? That has yet to have been
a fair concern.
We don't really know yet, right? I would like to think Nintendo still does. Say it again?
Last time they canceled, they didn't back in 2020, but
sure, but there was
also a lot of different things going on.
Right. Nintendo's back to normal now in terms of their schedule.
Yeah.
Nintendo's not facing any issues themselves. There's nothing out of the ordinary, I should say. They're always facing issues, as most companies are, but it's pretty much par for the course for every year. It's not like 2020 where everyone had to sort of figure things out, adapt, work from home, not being able to actually make any games. Like, that was a different situation.
Don't know when things are going to be released, so they don't want to announce release dates for anything anyways.
Right. So, I hear you. But if we think about it, like, every time we're in this window, like a month or two before there would be a Direct, then Nintendo makes certain announcements. People are like, oh, does this mean we're not getting a Direct? For example, we got like a massive Metroid Dread overview trailer like a few weeks before they had a Nintendo Direct that basically reincorporated that overview trailer into the Direct.
Right.
People thought that meant there wouldn't be a Direct, or there at least wouldn't be a Metroid segment in there. Still happened. And I might be mistaken here, but if I'm not mistaken, they announced the release date for Kirby and the Forgotten Land before the February Direct.
I think so.
We can figure this out. There's the number of Kirby trailers, but I'm pretty sure one of them is like the release date trailer. Kirby.
I'm almost certain that it was before.
I just want to fact check here. Release date trailer. Google's always listening. Oh, there's the announcement trailer, which I don't think has a release date on it.
I know. All we knew is the announcement was spring, but I think the very next trailer we knew the release date.
All right, so the Kirby and the Forgotten Land coming spring 2022. This is September 23. So that's... Where is it? There's another trailer. There's a trailer before the car. Right, like they get to, I remember it now. Like the car, they told us about the mouthful abilities during the Direct. We knew about the release date before the Direct. I'm just trying to find the trailer that told us that. Because there's another trailer. It's not the announcement trailer. There's another one. I know. I'm sure some people in the chat are like, "Well, it's this one, right?" I'm just trying to find it on the Nintendo account page, and I can't find it. Maybe I'm just remembering things wrong. I don't think I am, though.
I don't think so.
Because the thing is, the thing about YouTube search sometimes is that things replace it. So if you want to find a particular thing, sometimes you can't. It's not even good enough. I might have it on my computer. The trailer. What would I search for? Is it the copy abilities and co-op trailer? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'll just Google the release date announcement, then it'll probably tell me what I'm looking for. I think maybe that. Oh no, this is Nintendo UK, so I was expecting a different thumbnail, but this was in January. So they gave us a trailer in January, a month before the Direct, and it
Oh
was
yeah,
a
I
big.
found it.
There we go. So okay, I was able to. I just wanted to confirm it because I didn't want to misremember something, provide
January
misinformation
12th.
there. Yeah, January 12th. Correct. Thank you. So yeah, another example where they give us major news and we're an actual release date for a major game that would even be coming out after the direct, shortly after the direct. It does not mean there wouldn't be a direct, right? So same sort of situation here. We've seen it a few times.
Pre-orders out for this stuff early. They don't want to wait all the way till June to announce pre-orders for a game coming out next month. Not a major game,
right?
Anyways.
So if E3 is gonna happen in June, do you think it's good to announce all the information for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 for a month later? Nintendo's done that a couple times, but I think those were exceptions. Usually they do not do that. So yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we have enough reason to worry quite yet. Well, I mean, you're welcome to worry, right? I think with E3 being canceled, It is up in the air. Until Nintendo gives us a release date, we do not know. But I'm inclined to think, Kima, I tend to be more optimistic, but, I'm right half the time, that there will be a summer Nintendo Direct. Maybe it doesn't happen in June, maybe it happens in July, but I think sometime in the real summer, not September, there will be a major Nintendo Direct that basically is the E3 replacement.
I think they need to talk about Breath of the Wild, because I don't think they're going to I don't think they're going to blow out Breath of the Wild in a September Direct or its own Direct. We're not going to have to wait all the way till January next year or something for a Zelda Direct or something to blow it out. I definitely think they're going to blow it out at the typical time in some kind of summer event. And yeah.
What if they just give us a Zelda Direct?
They could do that. I think it's going to be by the end of summer we'll know what the name of the game is. I don't think they're going to wait till longer than that.
Yeah, I would almost like it if they were to announce the next month, hey, so in June we're going to be having a major Nintendo Direct with Treehouse following, and in this Direct it'll be focused on the latter half of 2022, also with news on the Legend of Zelda series. If it's something like that, we're going to learn more about Zelda, we're coming,
Let's go. I don't think that they're going to be part of Jeff Keighley's thing, the Summer
Games Fest.
Yeah. At this point, if they're not on, I don't think everybody else has already said. I feel like they would have said so, but no. It's still possible, but I don't think so. I think they're gonna do their own event at this point.
Could be right. Yeah. I don't know. Because it seems that there's a lot of other partners that would be involved. We're gonna see soon.
But I think they don't need Summer's Game Fest to have their own Direct and then set up a spot in Nintendo of America where they have the Treehouse recording or live streaming gameplay.
Yeah.
Just literally everything they would do at E3 anyways.
I hear you there. Did you see when the Game Awards tweeted about Xenoblade Chronicles 3?
I saw you guys replying to that, just being you guys always give Jimmy the shaft at the Game Awards. What is this?
Yeah, I don't. Xenoblade's gone just continually snub at the Game Awards.
I also saw somebody suggest that maybe this year, and I'm bro, even if it's part of the list, we all know what game is winning Game of the Year. Now that Breath of the Wild's not coming out, we all know 100% it's Elden Ring. It's.
I don't think Kirby the Forgotten Land.
Oh, there you go. No, I don't think there's anything that's going to come out this year that's going to top the impact that Elden Ring had in the gaming community.
It's highly unlikely. Highly unlikely.
Yeah.
I do want
Breath of the Wild, I feel was the only other one that could have contended with that.
And based off what I've seen, I was going to say no. I would have said no. Not to say I wouldn't enjoy Breath of the Wild 2 more, but just based on how I think it's going to impact the rest of the world. Now, with it being delayed, maybe there's some cool concepts that they didn't really show off too much, which they didn't. Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, I'm sure we don't know the half of what makes Breath of the Wild 2 special compared to the original.
Yeah.
I'm sure we haven't scratched the surface.
So, There's a number of tweets Nintendo's made about Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I think it'd be a good idea to kind of talk about them.
Okay.
I'll be skipping the other non-Xenoblade stuff. I'll put up the Twitter page in a moment. Let's see here. Info. There we go. Okay, cool. Brandon, I don't know if you're looking at the stream, but it looks like everything's visible. So, first tweet was just saying, step into the vast world of Aeonios in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 sooner than expected, now coming to Nintendo Switch on July 29th. We've talked about that. It's freaking awesome. Check out the latest trailer to learn more about the game's story, characters, strategic battle system, and where you can team up with up to 7 characters. So, Brandon, just like, you know, from the trailer, which is there's a lot to dissect there, you know, like, how are you feeling about this game so far? What do you want to sort of, like, touch on?
I think we should touch on the battle system first, because that's kind of like the big thing we saw with this trailer.
Okay.
I am interested to see... I want to see everything explained and broken down exactly, but I'm interested, because at first, when you just look at it, and I feel like this is kind of the same with Xenoblade, most Xenoblade games, and maybe it's an issue. I'm not sure if it's an issue or not, but you look at the UI and you're kind of like, oh gosh, there's so much stuff.
Yeah,
it seems so cleaner than 2. 7 characters. And I feel like if you think about it in the way I was saying earlier, where like with the Ouroboros mechanic, like they're essentially in pairs, so it's kind of like there's only like 3 characters, but they kind of work together. It's more like it's not as overwhelming as it seems. So I'm kind of looking at this and I'm trying to like dissect it and, you know, like figure it out. But it kind of looks overwhelming at first, and I'm hoping that as I look more into it, it's gonna like make more and more sense. But
yeah, I mean, it looks like, honestly, it looks a lot like 2. You know, it still has kind of like the art's position to like the mappings of the face buttons, which I loved. Yeah, I thought that was a really great way to handle it. It goes away from the wheel. It's so much nicer
than having to scroll through the arts, and you can just instantly know exactly where the art's going to be.
It's actually intuitive, at least from that perspective. And it seems like the left side has to do more tactics and movement options, which I think is really cool. And then
it seems like you build up levels of Ouroboros too, because you saw like I forget what they call it. It's like interlink or something like that.
There's
and it says names. Like level 1 or level 0 or level something.
Which could be related to the synergy. It directly ties to the synergy gauge, but there's always been a synergy gauge for characters.
Well, the synergy gauge is separate. There's one
for the chain
attack, under attack. Yeah. So that the synergy game seems to be a separate gauge.
What's interesting though is the chain attack now is like very compelling because it's now 7 characters.
Right.
So as opposed to 3.
True.
Yeah.
I wonder how that will work with the chain attacks.
And, you know, I just want to say that, like, I really like that now every character is actually fighting. Because in every previous Xenoblade game, you have a larger party and you see them traveling together in the story segments, but actually in the overworld, actually in the fights, they're never a part of it, right? Now, literally everyone's involved. So that immersion factor is still there. Beforehand, I was like, okay, Melee's just sitting behind. All right. You know, but in the actual cutscene, it's like, oh, here I am fighting. Like, I much prefer it this way. Obviously, it's kind of like a performance advancement, right? Like they accomplished something here with the engine where they could pull this off, and I just think it's a pretty cool thing that they're doing because now it adds more to the immersion. It's more believable, and it's cool to see everyone actually involved, literally with the gameplay, not just with the cutscenes.
Right.
Yeah. So, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I'm wondering how you level up the Ouroboros gauge. I wonder if it's similar to like leveling up your special gauge in 2. Which I forget. I need to play. It's been so long since I played 2, and it's such a complicated system. It's auto attacks that generate arts and arts that generate special level, right? That's how that works, and then you generate orbs, which you break during chain attacks.
I have to go back. You do build up a gauge. And once that gauge is built up, you can go into the chain attack mode, and everyone does an attack, and they break orbs that you need to sort of. So okay, as I'm like talking about remembering more, there are levels we're talking about 2, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, it's been a few years since I've played it, so I might be off with some details, but basically, you have like there's art trees. So you do one art that leads to another with your different party members, and if you successfully do up to 3 in a different path, that will have a status that will be, and sort of some sort of status will be done to the enemy, and it also will end with a really strong, powerful attack. But that's not the chain attack. Those are just linking different arts together to more powerful ones.
That assigns the orb depending on the combinations.
Yes, right. If it's one that has not been used yet, if it's an element that hasn't been finalized yet as a final attack to that chain, not a chain attack, but just like that tree path, then an orb will start rotating around the enemy to show that, hey, there's this status that's inflicting on the enemy, and it's part of the potential chain attack / full burst in the future.
And this flow, I think, is kind of like the best part of Xenoblade 2's battle system, because everything flows into each other. Like auto attacks build up your arts, and arts build up your specials, and specials allow you to do more with chain attacks, and it just has this amazing flow that you gotta like figure out what the flow is, but once you find it and you conquer it, like that's. Once you have this grasp on the system, that's super satisfying.
In Xenoblade 2, once you start learning how to auto-cancel, and you also set it up so you can do arts immediately without building them up, you can start a fight.
Yep. Switching characters and having all 4 of your arts ready to go immediately is such a nice mechanic.
Right. So but basically what happens when you auto-cancel correctly, you'll see like a blue circle. And so what happens is you can just auto-cancel, and everything flows into each other. You can switch on an auto-cancel, you can attack on an auto-cancel, and if you time it right, you just see this blue circle coming out every single button press you do, and it all flows together. Everyone's sort of switching in, attacking,
just filling up. You're
super fast
switching in order to get in your supernova or volcano attack, whatever they call it. And they always have these super awesome effects, and you get like you combine the different the different elements in order to like get different special versions of the attacks, and it's so cool.
yeah. So I got a super chat here. Shout out to Paul Gale Network. Thank you, Paul, for watching the channel and the support. I really appreciate the super chat there. Paul says, keep up the good work, Andres. June 12th, ND, let's go. I'm just going to assume that's suggesting that maybe we get a Nintendo Direct on June 12th, which is pretty much par for the course for when we expect Nintendo Directs.
Be around then, yeah.
I can see that. June 12th is a Sunday this year, so I don't know if they'll do it on a Sunday.
Probably like that. Maybe it's Friday on the 13th, or Monday on the 13th, I mean.
Yeah. Well, maybe it doesn't mean June 12th. Maybe it just means sometime between June and December. But either way, though, you know, there's definitely some directs coming. Yeah, for sure. But anyway, thank you so much for the super chat, buddy. Yeah. Going back to Xenoblade, though, like there's so much of the combat system there that's awesome, and it does look like they are improving upon things and getting more done there, and that's very exciting.
My point of bringing up how that works is I think maybe the Ouroboros replaces the specials, because it seems like that's your, you know, the specials was you and your blade doing an attack together, and this is you and your fusion dance partner doing an attack together. So I'm wondering if maybe they work kind of similarly.
Huh. I'm not sure.
I mean, yeah, it's really hard to say at this point, but that's just kind of.
You still have a lot of arts there. Let me see if I can take a look at the combat system for a second here. I'm just looking at Twitter. The fusion's like separate. Yeah. So let me see if I can share this real quick here. Right. So let me full screen that. So hopefully you can see this. It might be cut off because of my formatting here. But on the bottom right, what I'm seeing, right, is that there's 4 different sort of arts, right? You have your 3 sort of like basic arts. They're not basic per se. They each have their own abilities, but you know the sort of like normal, average arts. And it looks like
I like how
like
easy it is to read what they do. Like one just says AOE, so area of effect. Side break, you're going to hit on the side to get the break.
Right.
Back
it tells you.
Up,
you don't have to go to the
dazed.
menu to look at that.
Yeah, it's just super easy to see exactly what you're going to want to do.
I'm assuming you're looking at the stream right now.
Yep.
So you can see. So my overlay doesn't cover it.
It covers like I can see that it says back attack, but it kind of clicks halfway through the word.
But it's close enough.
But you can see most of the screen.
Okay, cool. So
just the edges are kind of.
All right, so it's good enough to talk about though, and people can still have a frame of reference. So yeah, you have these three arts here, but then there's this bigger one over here, which to me is like a special art, and then here it says ZR Fusion. And that, I believe, is the Ouroboros, the interlink, or whatever. So you see there's like multiple names for this. So it's a separate thing. And then there's the chain attack, which is plus, which is also a separate thing. And then to the left, there's glow ring, wide slash, interlink. Which
those
I thought
are
was
probably
the fusion.
I think interlink is, because you see the Ouroboros, so it definitely is that. But you see it's at level 0 right now. I'm assuming you charged it up using arts, and then you can do a glow ring. I'm assuming it's a specific type of move that you can do, like a specific Ouroboros move.
I wonder.
I'm assuming tactics is just you being able to tell your party members what to to do something, which you've been able to do for a while.
Question: and what if you press ZL, does it give you another menu, or does ZL mean when you press ZL? These options, the interlink, glow ring, wide slash, are mapped to the face buttons when you hold ZL.
That could be it. That could be it. I was thinking tactics meant more like in the older games where you could tell everybody to focus up on a specific enemy. So I would assume it would pop up a small sub menu and then it would have button prompts for that. But
my first assumption was that the left stuff was mapped to the D-pad.
Yeah, that's how certain aspects worked in 2, right?
And Torna.
Yeah,
that was the beauty of the system, right? So it was very clear cut. There's so my buttons do this, it maps to the screen. It's very symmetrical.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I just don't understand why the interlink. I understand what you mean by the interlink and there being a gauge. I'm just confused why the gauge is there, seemingly with the D-pad buttons, right? When we still have the fusion option on the right side.
Right, yeah, that is such a weird thing.
You see what I mean? How it seems redundant?
Yeah, I know what you mean exactly. I would assume hitting left on the D-pad here would get you into interlink when it's built up. That's how the kind of UI suggests. But then you have this fusion on ZR, so...
What if interlinking, and maybe going back and reading some stuff, but a lot of this stuff is in Japanese, so it's kind of hard. But what if interlinking is the process of building up the fusion? So in order to even build up the fusion, you have to interlink. Because the idea of interlinking is so you can link together to perform the fusion, right? I don't know. It's just kind of it's hard to say for sure what it is. So that's something we'll have to kind of figure out in the future. But overall, it still seems to be it's clean. It still looks cleaner than 2 by a substantial margin, I would say. There's a lot going on because it's an RPG, but I think this is something that more people will be able to sort of figure out.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of... Well, is there anything else you want to address specifically with the trailer, or should I think if we read other points that Nintendo brings up, it'll kind of surface more of our thoughts on the trailer. And then if we miss anything, we can sort of address it. And I know there are some other things, like Radio Metroid stuff in the chat, so I will get to that before we close out the show, so don't worry. So, let's see here. Nintendo put out this tweet. Noah and Mio have fused together. The giant form they combined to create is called Ouroboros. Lands and Cena or Yuna and Taeyeon can also pair up and transform into Ouroboros as well. So the implication here is that that's it. These are 3 transformations. We don't know that for a fact, but, there they are. They are Ouroboros. Some cool shots there.
Ooh, wait. I think they explained something. Check out the next tweet right below.
They
Read
do.
That one.
They do. The fusion of group members is called interlinking. Their fusion into Ouroboros makes them significantly more powerful with special abilities. You can interlink during battle, but use it for too long, and Ouroboros will overheat. So I don't think it clarifies interlink and fusion. Like they're interchangeable terms here, it seems. So that's still kind of hard. Yeah, when you see the gameplay footage of the Ouroboros, there is like a meter that is saying warning, warning. Like that means they are overheating.
Oh wait, I think I know what it might be.
What?
I think.
Should I go back to the trailer?
Sure, you can. I think the fusion button is how you fuse to do the normal moves, and I think that level is some kind of special move you can do that charges up while you're in.
So ZR it only activates when you're interlinked.
No, I think ZR is how you interlink, and that button that has the Ouroboros symbol on it charges up, and then you can hit that while you're fused to do some kind of special like super.
Okay, I don't think I have to go back for that, but that maybe that might be the case.
I think that makes sense, and that would make it to where the button's not redundant because it does something that
different,
and it would also make sense.
So basically, the point is that one of them has to be an attack.
So the D-pad only. Like, I think you can only use the D-pad moves when you're in fusion, and that's one of the moves, and I think that's how that works. I
think some of the D moves. I don't think the D-pad moves are exclusive to fusion.
You don't think so?
No, because they're not
charging up or anything.
No, there's
no like.
I don't agree. We'll take a look again.
The UI. Yeah, let's look at it again.
I think it would be it would be transparent if it wasn't active or available. Let me turn off the auto here.
Maybe.
If it, I mean, just take a look. Like, I mean, they don't look active.
It didn't look to me like they were like.
I mean, you could be right.
I'm trying to think.
Like, I don't see.
I'm trying to look. Get out of here, description. What is happening on my phone? I'm clicking buttons in there.
But to your point, they do not look available right now.
Yeah. They just look like they're not charging up or anything.
I guess my problem with what you're suggesting is that they're only available during fusion. So either fusion has to happen like literally all the time, or they just have this stuff here that doesn't need to be there. Like, I just feel like it makes more sense to just have it show up during fusion. Like, it's weird to just have it not be there.
There may be some other way of charging the interlink and other moves that you would want to see while you're not in fusion, so you know if it's charged up and, like, ready to go, so that you can fuse and, like, have something. Like, we don't know exactly how fusion works or how to charge up the fusion moves and how to charge up the interlink level. We don't know if that can be done, like if that has to be charged while you're fused. Like, this could definitely be stuff that you want to see.
Turn off the audio. Why is it activating again? That's annoying.
I don't know. But there definitely could be some information there that you would want to see while doing.
Well, like if you look at this shot, like they're not even like visible for Mio.
Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, there's not that much combat showing.
Maybe she doesn't have any unlocked. I don't.
Because the early gameplay. Right, like you see here, like he doesn't even Noah doesn't even have all of them yet. Is it Noah that's selected here? I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, it is Noah that is selected. I think we
or maybe
don't have
they
all the
only
answers yet.
Pop up when they're that doesn't make any sense.
I think we would have to kind of analyze more. There is a little bit of extra gameplay there. Maybe that could be like a dedicated video we do later. I kind of want to get to some of the other elements that we discussed, though, because we could kind of pick and choose every frame here, but I think we should save that for like a dedicated like battle system analysis.
Yeah, I think there's tons of stuff in the trailer we could look.
We should do that, though. I think that's a good idea to do a battle system analysis. So
yeah,
there may be a video coming soon.
Maybe we can record that tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe we could. That might work out. Let's see here. Untitled America, have a look at Noah. Am I still screen sharing? Yes, perfect. Okay, so have a look at Noah Mio's appearance once they interlink and become Ouroboros. Check out the massive sword they wield during battle. It's pretty cool. Indeed it is. It is pretty darn cool. There is some similarities. Like, every Xenoblade game has a mech in it. Like, right. Even though when you play Xenoblade, you might not think it's like a mech game. They're not mech games, but there are mechs in them. In Xenoblade 1, you didn't control any mechs, but all the mechons were like
Yeah.
mechs, like the big ones.
All your enemies were like mechs.
Yeah, you were fighting mechs.
Xenoblade X is definitely a mech game.
You
just
literally
straight up.
they call them skells in Xenoblade X, and you have to play for like
Yeah.
20 to 30 hours before you unlock them. But yeah, you can unlock skells.
It's like it feels like the game is definitely meant to you need those to
Right,
finish
the world
game
is
in
so
time.
big, right? The skells scale the world down because it's so huge. But once you get on them, they're giant robot things that you can fly around the environment and fight things with. So it's pretty darn cool. If you look at Lons and Cena as an Ouroboros, the Ouroboros has a massive form, which, as you might guess, is great for protecting their friends from powerful attacks. So they're the Rhine form, right? And then have a look at Uni and Taion. When they interleague and become an Ouroboros, they'll have the powerful ability to revive all fallen allies at once during battle. So they're the healer. It's pretty clear. It's interesting to your point, Brandon. Like, because they're being featured so heavily, it does make me wonder how often we'll be using these fusions. Because if you think about it, it almost looks like we have the offense form, defense form, healer form, which is kind of like the base sort of traditional core system of every Xenoblade game. Like, there's an offense, there's a defense, there's a healer. So I wonder, and we have 2 characters for each one. So I wonder how much we're actually going to be using these fusions. Are they going to just be like a powerful few seconds, or is it just something that's going to be happening throughout battle several times? It's going to be interesting to see how that balance works out.
I would assume it's something that you charge up the moves and then you go into it and then you
and I bet there's gonna
doing
be
it until you have run out of charge.
Yeah,
I go back.
Yeah, I bet there's gonna be sets that people will be able to do that will just basically keep you in fusion pretty much the entire time. I wouldn't be shocked if that's kind of what, and that is entirely dependent upon what skill trees you use, what items you use, and things of that nature.
It's like in Xenoblade 2, you could really get it to where you're just doing specials constantly, and you just go in there, you can just do go in, do all your moves at once, switch over to your blade, do all your moves again, give it a couple seconds for it to recharge, you switch again, all your moves are ready. And you're just constantly just getting this special after special after special and orb, and then just chaining attack constantly. So there's ways to just completely break the system, in a way. And I assume that will be the same in this game.
So I move on to the next tweet already, right? Just kind of progressing here. Soldiers of Keys and Agnes can materialize the weapons they use in battle, known as blades, at will. Each soldier's blade is a reflection of them, so they might take different forms such as swords, guns, shields, or spears. So there's a strong implication here that all these characters are blades, and blades were basically people, sort of, in Xenoblade 2, but they were also weapons at the same time. And here, and you guys could give me your opinion on the wording here, but it says can materialize the weapons they use in battle, known as blades. So their weapons are called blades, not them, but they can materialize them, and those weapons are reflections of their personalities. So it might even be more of an evolution of what a blade is. Maybe it's maybe in now in Xenoblade 3, blades and people are one and the same, right? And people have an inner blade within them. Right. They were already working towards the... Right, there was... I forget there was...
What was the other one?
I don't remember the names. There's Flesh Eater.
Flesh Eater.
Yeah.
And Blade Eater. That's what it was.
Was it were they both some sort of eater?
Yeah, I think so. Blade Eater is a human who becomes a blade, and a Flesh Eater is a blade who becomes a human.
Right, because they're
kind of yeah. And so I assume that just became maybe that just became more of a normal thing, and so eventually it just happened so much that they just became the same, essentially.
So they never answered the question, or maybe they did, if blades and people could have kids in Xenoblade 2.
Right.
So is it possible this future is a future where there's all the offspring are the offspring, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are the offspring of blades and people? What if, right? Like, what if Noah is actually a descendant of Shulk and Rex and Pyra? I mean, not Shulk, but Rex and Pyra.
Right. I mean, it's possible.
Maybe.
I wouldn't be too surprised if this world is. I'm confused because what is this confirmed to be? Like a new place where the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2 are merging?
We know that Aeonios is an open. Well, we don't know if it's open world yet, but you know if it's a merged. We know it's a merging of Xenoblade 1 and 2. Then what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that both like everything of both worlds collide together and it's an amalgamation? Or is there like a particular place where things sort of just migrated to? Hard to say.
My thing is like I'm wondering, and I'm not sure if this is confirmed yet, but is this a third place where 1 and 2 are merging into? Is this a place?
If you remember at the end of 2, they find a
continent,
and all the Titans sort of land on the continent.
Right. The continent kind of like becomes a thing.
So I was thinking that's what I was wondering.
Like, is that right? Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, is this that? Because that's what I was thinking. But I was also like, but is this a third universe that the first two are melding into, or is this the second universe that the first one's going into?
Well,
the first universe where the second one's going into? Like, what exactly is happening?
Yeah, because in Future Connect, there's an implication there's some sort of portal nonsense happening, where it's a trickling between one world and another.
But is there an intermediate world, or is it just 1 and 2's world?
Well, I guess we'll have to play the game to find out.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. I was just wondering if that was confirmed or not.
Yeah, I don't think it is. We can make assumptions based off the things we see in the environment, but there's things from both, right? There's huge structures in both, so it's gonna be interesting to see how they explain the merging, if they even do. Another thing I want to point out though is that we do see a shot in the trailer where Noah's sword becomes part of his hand.
Yes. He does the whole Iron Man stuff.
Yeah, which is really freaking cool, and
So
I wonder what that means for gameplay reasons, because that's not a fusion, that's something else.
No.
So that could be alluding to a whole other mechanic there. And we do see each of these characters take on like the roles of some of their friends. Like we saw Noah with the birds, for example.
Yeah, it does seem like you can choose their class.
Yeah.
Because we saw like Noah with each of the different types of weapons, I think it was. I forget. Well, we saw him with other things. We saw different characters with different weapons that we didn't see them with in the trailer. And it showed like it had like different class names. I forget. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like, there's different class options for sure. I saw that stuff. And then there's his last tweet on Xenoblade here. And I know there's been some speculation as to what that may be. So after clashing on the battlefield, Noah and Mio and their teams are suddenly attacked by a giant creature belonging to neither Keys nor Agnes. What is this behemoth that possesses such overwhelming power? So I'll say based
that's
off
also an Ouroboros.
It seems to be something of the sort, correct. I will say maybe they become Ouroboros after this event. I will say that this also seems to be explaining the beginning of the game, because they're saying that they're clashing against each other, and I think this event where they meet this character is when they become a team. And perhaps to your point, Brandon, since this seems to be something like an Ouroboros, maybe this character causes them to become Ouroboros.
I definitely think so. In the trailer, we see Noah having this kind of like almost Doctor Strange kind of scenario where he gets like pushed out of his body, and then afterwards they show a cutscene with like Noah and Mio like in this kind of like weird mirror dimension where it's like
that's when they're fusing,
being an Ouroboros. So it definitely seems like something that he does. I'm not even convinced that this is a bad guy. I'm wondering if he's just somebody who attacks just to show, like,
I don't know if this is the big bad.
Something.
I think some people have speculated this might be the big bad. It could be, because he says some pretty cool, powerful lines. So hard to say for sure, but he could be at least a very important character for the late game.
Oh, it definitely seems important.
Yeah, he's absolutely important. I just wonder if he's something we kill off like halfway through, or if he's like important towards the end. You know?
Right. I'm wondering if this is one of those characters that comes off as a bad guy in their first like encounter, but he's not actually bad. Because he seems like he looks pretty evil. He's the one who shows them that Ouroboros are... but Ouroboros look kind of evil in general.
Perhaps he has a plan. Maybe. That'd be kind of cool. I like that idea. I'll say that. Actually, I don't know what I'm gonna say. I don't know.
No.
I know. I feel like this is definitely the beginning of the game, though. This event that occurs. What I did want to address actually is that from the trailer, we do see that both sides are trying to take out our actual main characters, and it could be that this event that caused them to become Ouroboros is what is causing some sort of delusion, and they see something in them that makes them think that they're evil, and that's why they try to take them out. And so basically, they're getting hunted by their people. Yeah. And I think it's the inciting incident for the game, and they're trying to figure out this and the issue of them not having a long lifespans, perhaps, which could be tied to them maybe being blades, right? Because they're not normal people.
Oh yeah.
That could all be sort of tied to it here. So I keep looking because my cat woke up. So, yeah. Yeah, there's a number of like really cool things that they point out that there's a lot to sort of dissect here. We're just still kind of scratching the surface. Let me see here. Go back to the podcast. I realize no one can even see me looking at my cat because we were sharing everything. But
yes.
Yeah. So I do want to address a couple ads I got here. So I see Paul Gale Network had added me. I meant June 14th, Tuesday is my guess. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty good guess. Yeah, I can see that for sure. They usually happen early June, so I mean that could. I hope you're right, Paul.
Yeah.
Thomas added me earlier as well. Assuming we get Metroid Prime remake this year, to what extent do you believe it will be revamped? Also, would you predict it would sell more than its original release on GameCube? So I do think I'll answer the last question first. I do absolutely believe it will sell more than the original on GameCube.
100%. Probably on day one.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if it outsells Metroid Dread. It'll at least be comparable, I think. So,
3D games typically just sell better than 2D ones in general, for the most part, unless you're Mario.
Yeah. Yeah. How loud is that, by the way? Can you hear that?
I can't hear what you're referring to. So.
Okay, so I guess it's not that loud.
At least not through Discord.
Okay. Guys in the chat, let me know if you hear, like, sand.
Right.
Yeah.
What they're hearing is not necessarily what I hear.
Right, because Discord has different sort of filters. But anyway, what was I saying here? In terms of Metroid Prime, I do think it'll sell more than the GameCube version. Everything on Switch sells better. I mean, yes, it's a re-release, right? But for example, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition outsold Xenoblade Chronicles, the original on the Wii, by a sizable margin pretty early on. I think last I heard it's at least at 1.5 million. So it did pretty good compared to the 900,000 it sold on Wii. And there's still years of time left for it to continue to sell. So I could see Definitive Edition hitting at least 2 million lifetime. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. As far as the graphics go, I'm kind of expecting like a Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition as well.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the updates.
Yeah.
I think probably lighting is going to be a big one that they'll change. I think that's kind of one of the easiest ways to affect the mood in that type of game and the atmosphere. Kind of like what they did with Wind Waker, in a way. But obviously they'll change more than just the lighting. But I'm just saying that the lighting should affect it in a similar manner.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see here a few guys did say that you can't hear something in the background, so I will keep that in mind. I'll have to work on what we can adjust. This is a temporary set right now, right? Because in the middle of a moving process that will be taking place over the space of a few months, right? But also got a new cat, so it's kind of like, where do I put everything, right?
Right.
But I'll keep that in mind. Hopefully, it's not too much. I mean, it only happened for like what? 30 seconds or a minute over the course of a 2.5-hour podcast, so maybe not the worst thing in the world.
Unacceptable. How dare you?
Unacceptable. You're right. Yeah, I think it's definitely gonna sell better. I'd be shocked otherwise. Maybe not immediately, but it'll have the legs, especially because I do think it's gonna be fairly revamped, to answer the first part of your question. Based off the rumors, assuming it's all true, right? this isn't like something that Nintendo just put together very quickly. This is something that Retro Studios has been working on for a few years. So you know, if they're working on it since like 2018 or something like that, like this is it's probably one of those games that Nintendo's actually sitting on.
I wouldn't be surprised if the demo that they supposedly showed Nintendo,
that's the idea,
was this.
Right, exactly, that's the idea. They showed off a demo and Nintendo's like, okay, make this a full-on Metroid Prime remake, but also here's Metroid Prime 4. That's the implication from the rumors we've heard. I totally agree there. And so, yes, in short, I do think this is going to be a fairly significant remaster, because the term remaster and remake are sort of like blurred here. But I'm expecting something to the effect of a definitive edition like Xenoblade Chronicles, where a lot of the textures are going to be completely reworked. It's going to be HD.
New models were needed.
New models, new lighting, new gameplay fixes. I don't know if there's going to be new content, like a new adventure or a new side mode. Because I expect Prime 4 to be coming out next year. But if there is like a new side mode, then I think that implies that Prime 4 is probably not coming out next year.
I think they could add like Kraid or something, but
maybe. That wouldn't be too significant. So it's possible. So it is possible.
They could literally just add like another, like just have a counter for him. And they don't have to add like, they don't have to make it like a whole other like part of the campaign. They can just literally make like another room where you can, and just make it like a natural encounter in the game.
Yeah, that could be. Let's see here. I think we've pretty much gone to the end. Is there anything else you want to say for Metroid Prime? You want to expand on your thoughts more so?
I don't think so.
I think you pretty much got it there. Yeah. Well, I guess I was gonna show you the guys the cat again, but she wandered under the bed. So let me see if I can get her real quick. Let me see if I can get her. I'll just cover the camera real quick with something. No. Leg's face. Let me see if I can pull her out. Hi. I'm just going to show you on camera. Relax. I got her. I'm going to show her in a moment. There she is.
There she is.
There she is. She's like, hey, why are you holding me? Let me play. I want to play. She's a little girl.
Holds her arms out in such a strange manner. Just like...
Well, it's because I'm holding her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, let me play. I want to play. So, you can go play. But yeah, there she is. She exists. She's a real thing. She's still obviously growing. But, you know, as she gets more comfortable, maybe she'll be more involved. But yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it for the show. Is there anything else we should talk about, Brandon, before we call it a night?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything. Like, we had a pretty good beefy show today. I covered a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm excited as hell for Xenoblade 3. Less excited, but still excited for Splatoon 3. Just kind of hoping we'll see some kind of a little something that makes it a little more different than Splatoon 2.
I bet that'll
multiplayer
happen during the direct. They'll have some sort of big surprise then, whatever that will be. There'll be something. They're not going to go through. They're not going to go through the summer without talking about this game again.
Like, for sure.
So.
But we got a bit of good news, you know, an anti-delay to kind of balance out the Breath of the Wild delay.
Right, but now they just played the Mario movie.
Yeah, well, that's a movie then.
Yeah, but at least they gave us a Splatoon date that wasn't too far off either.
Yeah.
Or at least September's not that far off. Yeah.
It's 2 months past what we were thinking, so.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, that is all for now. Leave a like. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Perhaps consider joining as a member. But we'll see you all really soon. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.